The main character was hit by a car that did not stop at a traffic light, which resulted in her death. It seemed like the end had come. That's what she thought, until a man approached her. He didn't understand how Lady Rosaria had enough strength to burst into even his bedroom. She didn't understand what kind of beauty this was. She almost mistook him for a girl. This is what life after death looks like, but it's a bit too vulgar. The gentleman asked whether it seemed to me or to her that her obsession had gone beyond all bounds. He did not understand how the future crown princess, a role model for others, could stoop to such a level. This was simply amazing to him, but the girl herself did not understand who he was and what he was even chatting about. He also called her by a strange name, so she didn't understand at all what was happening. It was strange she didn't understand why she clenched her fist to such pain, and the man asked if she would continue to stand there. Apparently, she disturbed them. He was calmly having fun with these girls until she came in, so she turned around and said she had to leave. But he said if she was going to run away, she should at least do it right. He forgives this for the last time and asked her to remember this while calling her his bride. The girl was very surprised and did not understand why he called her his bride. He was having fun there with these half-naked girls. The man noted that he had no idea that she wanted this, so he invited her to join in. Just before that, she must not forget to kiss his feet. She turned and walked towards him, and he gloated because he didn't think that she wanted to be near him so much. But the girl came up to him, to hit him, and shouted at him to shut his mouth. The man did not understand what was going on, and the girl shouted that she would refuse such a favor. She yelled at him to go to hell and called him a lecherous goat. To sum it up, she's in the Duke of Rosaria's mansion. The girl gave the heir to the throne a good beating, but fortunately, there were no consequences. Milady turned to the maids and asked them where her father was now. But all because of this. Her father is the most influential man in this country, and she is his only daughter. The maid informed him that his lordship was in the office, so the woman went at once. The maids turned to Milady and informed her that she needed to come to the second floor, and the stairs were on the left. The girl turned back and thanked him for the hint with a grin. In the eyes of the maids, she looked like a woman with a snake. Well, she also has a bad reputation. It's been exactly a week since she ended up in this body, and now, at least she has learned to walk correctly. But then she was constantly falling, and it was hell for her. Mom cried every day, not even having time to understand why she ended up in this place. It became clear that her new life could be taken away by her own father. It was only after she was locked in a room, under the pretext of thinking about her behavior, that she realized the situation she was in. Firstly, this country is called Kartika, the largest empire on the continent, and its history stretches back almost 1,000 years. Secondly, the line of Duke Rosarius is one of those that were at the origins of the country. The most outstanding swordsman of the empire came from it. And finally, regarding this body, it belongs to the only daughter and fiancée of the Crown Prince, Elena Rosaria. And also, this is a fictional world of the novel. She was so unlucky to end up in this particular body. Elena Rosaria is a character in the novel The Lady with the White Rose, which she read on the advice of a friend from a past life. And it was not for nothing that everything seemed familiar to her. She saw this plot for the second time. The main character, Rosetta, is the lady with the white rose. She meets the main character, the Crown Prince. And it was a story about overcoming adversity and great love. But all their troubles happened precisely because of her. Roughly speaking, she is the main villain of this world. If we remember all the atrocities that the owner of the body inflicted on the heroine, such as pouring wine on her and ruining her dress, she also periodically beat her and poisoned her, but she survived. Elena understood that this prince would cut off her head because of this. However, judging by the fact that he doesn't care about his appearance, the main character hasn't appeared yet. The girl understood that the time had not come for Rosaria to become a real villain, and that was good, because now she knows exactly what to do. After that, the girl knocked on her father's office door. First, she needed to survive, so she turned to her father and told him that she had something to tell him. And in order to survive, she would like to break off her engagement with the crown prince. She needs to get out of the love triangle. Her father started shouting and asking what she was talking about because she had been pestering him with this engagement, and now she wanted to call it off. It seems that she has completely lost her fear. It is so easy to break the agreements with the imperial family. The girl didn't even hope that it would be easy, and she understands what the Duke is talking about. She has no need to hurry at all. What matters now is what she says next. High rank, power, and great wealth are things she could never have dreamed of in her past life. To fully enjoy it, she must take it all for herself. Elena noted that it seemed she had made a decision too quickly. The father decided to forget about it because she always behaves like that, so she can leave. Well, the girl then said that she had another idea. She asked him to make her his only daughter his heir. Her father was absolutely horrified when she heard about this, so he immediately kicked her out of his office. The next day she tried to visit her father again, but he wouldn't even let her in. And the day after him, on any day, she was forbidden to approach the office. It was just a curse. She did not understand why it was so difficult for him to share with her. Elena wants to become an heir so much, and she sits all day in her room because she was forbidden to enter the office. She understood that the most important thing was to inherit the duchy. Otherwise, even after the engagement was broken, she would have to become someone's wife. And this means that there is no freedom she would not want, that she hoped, because he would agree to make his only daughter his heir, but it was not to be. Being a duchess is a big responsibility. They just tell you the score. One mistake, and she's finished. She understood that at this rate, he could decide her head before the prince. She sighed and realized that she was unlikely to agree unless she went completely crazy. Even though she wasn't the real Elena, she came with a terrible reputation, along with the body, and she was too hasty. And then she realized that she needed to think it over carefully. She was definitely not going to marry the prince anytime soon. The main characters met when it was snowy winter outside. And now it's spring, and that means she has time. She just needs to become the heir to the ducal family. And then she would be able to break off the engagement before winter. So she decided that was what she would do. Her mother came to her, and she was surprised because she came so unexpectedly and did not even warn. This is Elizabeth Tazar, Rosaria, who is Elena's mother. The girl asked what had brought her here. Mother was very frightened. Elena didn't quite understand what she was so afraid of, so she said that she wouldn't spill a cup of tea on her anymore. The mother was surprised, and the girl was even more shocked because she said it at random. But it seemed that Elena really did such a thing. Mother noticed that she was told that she came to her father every day, so she decided to ask why she did this. The girl said that she just wanted to refuse the engagement to the prince. Because of that incident, the woman was very surprised. Elizabeth didn't understand what she was talking about. Elena said that that's not all. She also wants to become the heir of the family. Elizabeth was even more surprised and didn't even know how to utter a word. Elena was shocked that it was so unexpected. From this, Mother began to sip tea and ask why she decided to abandon the engagement. Elena said that it was just like that. Then she noticed that she treasured it out of fear, but still wanted to listen. Perhaps she should try to persuade her mother, so she said that she herself did not fully understand why she was so obsessed with the crown prince. And she keeps thinking about that incident when she is alone in the room. Mother asked her what she was thinking. Elena said that she thinks the crown prince is pure trash. Elena said that she felt like she had been blind all this time, and that he couldn't even be called a human being. But she didn't understand how he could behave like that in front of his own fiancée. He's just a scumbag, a pile of rottenness that even flies wouldn't sit on. Mother was in complete shock. I didn't understand what was happening to her daughter. The girl did not understand at all how he could become the heir to the throne, because he could only destroy the empire. And this principle is not just senile, but she cannot even describe it in words. Mother asked her to watch her words. She seemed to be overexcited. Elena said that it was not possible to break off the engagement now, but she did not want to become the wife of the crown prince. Therefore, she sincerely wants to follow in her father's footsteps. She would like to help the family and get involved in all the affairs, all so as not to disgrace the family. Mother smiled and noted that she had changed quite a lot. So she said to believe her, but asked to promise her something. Elena realized that she had succeeded, although it was sincere. So the girl said she could promise anything. Mother said she should never give in, no matter what happened, and not throw away books anymore, even if she didn't understand. She also asked that she not light books on fire or throw shoes during dance lessons if her feet hurt, and she also asked that she promise not to call her instructor names. And finally, she asked Elena not to chase her out of the room. The girl promised that this would not happen again. That's why Elena believed that her mother should trust her. The woman was not against it and still believed her. Then her mother, who believed in her changed character, went straight to her father's office, and it seems was able to convince him after all. Elena thought that she would have to wait at least a little because of his difficult character, but the maids were happy to inform the bear that today she would begin to take lectures on preparing an heiress. The girl was shocked that everything happened so quickly. She tried hard in her imperial history lessons. She also tried ballroom dancing, even fencing, and the knights were simply delighted with her skills. The man believed that she was a real genius, a talented swordsman, and he was absolutely sure of it. He also told Lady that she was born to practice fencing, and he noticed this when he first met her. Elena is taller than her peers, a little weak, but she got the rest of his lordship's muscles. But then, Milady went somewhere, so he asked where she went. The lady does not like the heat and constantly these trainings, so no master of the sword is planned. She has other activities, so it's time for her to go. She also told Sir Dial that he had done well. The man shouted after her that if she suddenly changed her mind, it could come to them at any time. They would not always wait for her. It seemed that after her mother's help, her plan went smoothly. But she is not sure that it was necessary. During their first family dinner, she almost got into a fight with her father because he told her to take the sword and fight. She must have been shocked when her mother brought her a sword because she had no idea how she could defeat her father. A little more, and she would have definitely gone to the next world. But then it became clear that the most influential person in the family was the mother. She was happy when she saw her daughter and asked if she had come back from training. The girl confirmed it, and the woman asked her to call her mommy. She wanted it so much, so she was waiting for her daughter's words. Elena still said it, but it sounded so ominous. The woman didn't care, because she still thought that her Elena was smart. The girl decided that it would be fine. It was better for her not to know the details of her relationship with the Duke. Then there was a knock on their door. It was Volston Luke, the second son of Count Duke's successor to the post of tutor of the imperial families and current tutor of Elena. The father was interested in how his daughter had behaved today. On Tuesday, he reported that it was as usual, just great. Elena was able to cover the material much faster than he expected, and at the next lesson, she becomes familiar with the list of things that an heir should know. The gentleman did not answer, so the Count's son asked if he could say a few words. He doesn't know exactly how high his expectations are for Milady, but it seems that she would be a perfect fit for the role of heir to the ducal family. The gentleman noted that this was too generous an assessment for a girl who had only just finished studying the basics, but she had an amazing speed of perception of the material and also an understanding of how to apply it in practice. Sometimes she says things that even he doesn't always understand with his knowledge, but most of all, he appreciates the efforts of the young lady. He would like to ask the master not to ignore them. The master listened to him and then let him go. The man sat next to his master and cried, but suddenly His Highness began to open his eyes. It was Prince Lloyd, and he came too, but he had a terrible headache. He stood up, but the servant said that His Highness should not make any sudden movements. Lloyd was very angry and asked him who he was, and what this place was. The servant asked again, and did not understand at all what His Highness was talking about, and could not say that he did not remember him. This is Dane. After all, he had to think about what happened before, and he clearly remembers celebrating with his brother in the room drinking wine. He didn't understand why his hair was so long, and then he wondered how long he had been unconscious. The gentleman shouted for him to bring him a mirror at once. The servant asked him to wait a little. After this, when the gentleman saw himself, he was in complete shock and could not believe that it was him. The man couldn't believe that he was the emperor's son, so he asked the boy again what his name was. The guy said his name was Dane and asked if he really didn't remember it. The gentleman noted that judging by the wounds, he had badly damaged his head. So he asked the boy to explain to him what happened to him. Dane said that he had a small conflict with his younger brother, His Highness the Crown Prince. Lloyd fell down the stairs, and I found myself in such a state that perhaps if the imperial physician had been more active in his treatment, his memory would not have suffered so much. Although he was the eldest son, he was not the heir. Apparently, he was not the best person. The father and mother came to Elena and called her. The girl did not understand what had happened because her father had never addressed her first. So she asked what was wrong, after which her father ordered her to tidy herself up, all because she will go to the castle. This news stunned the girl. The girl did not understand at all what he was talking about and why she needed to go to the castle at all. Her father asked her just not to say that the future heir to the duchy was not going to introduce herself to the emperor. Mother was very happy because it finally happened. Elena herself was delighted and quickly got ready. After that, they were very happy to greet His Majesty the Great Emperor. The man's name is Rorian Kartika, and he is the current ruler of the Kartika Empire. He asked the Duke how he was doing. He also noted that there was no need for these greetings. Elena was surprised when she saw what a lively character he had, and he did not look like a prince at all. The emperor asked him to explain why he had come to him with his daughter. The Duke said that the fact was that they had chosen and wanted to present the heir to the duchy. The emperor was glad because it finally happened, but then he worried. And I asked him just not to say that this is what he thought. The Duke announced that everything was exactly as it was, and that his daughter, Elena Rosaria, would become the heir. The emperor was in complete shock and did not understand what he was even talking about. After this, the girl walked through the garden and remembered how the emperor asked the Duke if he wanted to renounce this country, but he denied it. The emperor told Elena to visit her Genichok because they had not seen each other for a long time. She agreed to this. She even felt a little pleased by the way he stuttered. It was clear what exactly the emperor would say after he saw her off. The emperor will begin to say that there will be a duke and will think carefully again about the heir. But even he won't be able to change anything in the matter of the heirs of the nobility, and her father won't change his decision if he's already made it, until her mother intervenes, of course. It's high time you decided on the engagement. On the way, she met a maid. She asked that the maid be scared, but the woman just wanted to know where the crown prince's palace was. The maid said that she could go straight along this road, and this surprised the mistress very much. The maid tried to prove that it was true. Elena was upset because she almost came to the chambers of this scum herself. At that time, Elena did not yet suspect that while trying to avoid the crown prince, she would meet another. It was better to get as far away from the palace as possible, but she didn't even know where she was now. It didn't look like an imperial garden. It was too small and inconspicuous. However, it is immediately obvious that he is well taken care of, because there is not the slightest flaw. A voice came from behind her, asking who was there. When the lady turned back, she saw a man standing there asking how she dared to come here without permission. Cold blue eyes. This is His Highness the First Prince. Therefore, the lady immediately greeted him and said that she was the daughter of the Duke of Rosary. The lady was surprised that he did not recognize her, although one could count on one's fingers how many times the weak first prince appeared at banquets. The gentleman was surprised and apologized because at first he didn't even realize it was her. She told him that there was nothing wrong with it, so there was no need to apologize because it was she who had burst into the garden without asking and had unwittingly disturbed him. The prince informed her that if she was looking for the palace of the inherited prince, it was in the other direction. Elena noticed that she hadn't been here for a long time. She got lost by pure chance. The garden turned out to be so beautiful that she was captivated by it. She believed that this garden was designed according to his preferences. The principal noted that this was probably true and assumed that this meeting was not accidental and that she wanted to have a cup of tea. The lady was surprised and realized that something was wrong, so she thanked him for the invitation. But she came with her father, and it was time for her to go back, so it was a pity that they would not be able to have tea. The gentleman thought that there was nothing to apologize for. They would definitely meet again in the future, so he wished her a good journey. The first prince in the novel was a timid, quiet man who was constantly yelled at by the crown prince and only spoke to the main character at the very end. But now he behaves calmly, even dismissively, and this is not at all like him. A man with the face of the first prince who behaves completely differently, so it is very interesting who he really is. The prince told Dane to get out. He noted that it didn't quite match up with his story, so he didn't understand how it happened. The servant himself agreed that she did not look like herself. There were rumors that the Duke's daughter had changed so much that she seemed to have become a different person, and it seems they were true. Basically, I asked what this meant and how she became a different person. Dane didn't know how to say it first. His Highness hit, and then rumors started spreading. It's as if she's been replaced. They say that after this incident, she started studying to become an heiress. And judging by what they saw today, she's changed a lot. The prince noticed and realized that it was just like him, but like a different person. So he found it interesting. When the mistress arrived, the maid was in complete shock because the mistress said that she saw His Highness with the first prince. Elena said that it was true, and he was not like the one she knew before. The maid asked if she wanted to say that the first prince had come to his senses. The mistress did not quite understand what he was talking about. The maid was surprised that she did not know that His Majesty had fallen down the stairs during an argument with the crown prince and had not recovered for more than 2 weeks. Many thought that he would never wake up, and apparently the worst was avoided. It's a strange incident. He couldn't wake up. She woke up, and he acts like a different person. The lady could not believe what she was just thinking. After that, she decided not to think about it, because such a rare phenomenon could not happen twice in a row. She could not completely rule out the possibility. She needed to know the details. On this beautiful day, she had to spend 2 whole hours with a subhuman. Since this is the Emperor's order, they must follow it. Apparently, he wants to influence her to give up her position as the Duke's heir, which is the worst thing you can imagine, because that damn old man always ruins everything. The lady kept asking how much time was left. The principal noted that he didn't even know that she was so insatiable. Elena didn't quite understand what he had in mind this time. Basically, he was wondering if it really wasn't enough for her to just be near him. He is surprised that she thinks she is special and outstanding, or that she thinks she will become his bride because she is nearby. The crown prince said that this was not the case, and it was all because of her family. Otherwise, there would have been no engagement. Although if the family was influential, then why not take advantage of the moment? She should just sit back and rejoice, and not even think about shaking the empire with the news that she will become the heir to the duchy. She will be his wife. She will be able to bathe in luxury, and she will not have to do anything. The lady noted that he was indeed right. The prince was shocked that she agreed with them and didn't understand what the hell was going on. The lady noted that she is quite greedy, so she wants to get what she wants, and she doesn't care whether it is the crown prince or the duchy. However, she overdid it a bit and wasn't good enough to hold 2 things in her hands at once, so she would have to give up something. The prince agreed and noted that she could think rationally sometimes if she tried. After which, Elena said that she would refuse the engagement, and they should break it off. He wants it too. Perhaps we should have talked about this a little later, but now is the perfect time. Who knows? Maybe it will work out, and she will be able to persuade him and calmly break off the engagement. It is unlikely that the crown prince wants to see her in the place of the heir. But he doesn't want to see her as the crown princess even more. That's why she wanted him to say that he agrees to it. The prince became angry and asked her what she had just said. The lady remarked that she would like to refuse the engagement with His Highness. She believed that everything happened because of this, that she was constantly hanging around. Therefore, she reconsidered her attitude and decided to distance herself from the prince because he hated her so much. The gentleman hit the table and couldn't believe that she said that he didn't understand how she dared to mention such a thing. He noted that if she was so concerned about his honor, then she should give up the place of heir they are princesses. Elena looked at him and was not sure that she was interested in his honor. The first day was enough to trample her dignity and pride. So the lady said that if he was so worried he could blame her for the breakup. Elena was sure that he would come up with something, and then she would gain freedom. But the prince was very angry and started shouting at her. To be honest, the lady did not understand at all why he was angry. His Highness had despised her all this time, and it seemed to her that he would gladly agree if she just offered. The guy didn't understand what kind of nonsense she was talking about. After that, the servant apologized and said that 2 hours had already passed, so the principal immediately announced that it was time for him to go. Elena was in complete shock and asked His Highness to stop because they were not finished yet. Elena told him to just agree to break off the engagement, but basically go back to her and tell her that time was up. He spent 2 hours with her on the orders of the emperor. He has nothing more to do here, so he leaves. Elena didn't understand at all what was going on. He wasn't that punctual. She doesn't understand at all what it was all about because he just left without saying anything. The lady was angry because this was not at all what she expected he showed, with his whole appearance, that he hated it. He himself was against this engagement. And now this behavior. The lady thought that he would jump for joy if she refused the position of princess, because it was much easier to force him to refuse the post of heiress than this position of his wife. But what actually happened to him, and why he doesn't want to agree, still remains a mystery. She didn't understand what kind of problems he could possibly have. But suddenly she remembered the 3 clichés of Korean dramas. Cliché number 1. The first girl who hits a guy starts to like him a lot. No one has done that to him before. Cliché 2. He may like impudent, while she does not like such arrogant types. A man is ready to buy her for any money. Cliché 3. He can't stop loving her, and she hits him and says she'll never date him. He realized his feelings when the girl said she hated him. Elena hoped that nothing like that would happen, because it was scary to even imagine. It all really pissed her off. The classes were over for today, but the lady said that she was not talking about that at all. And she also began to say that it was not what he thought. She was just thinking about her own thing. The teacher said it didn't matter. She wasn't in a condition to continue studying, so he didn't intend to continue teaching. That's all for today, so the teacher had already left. Elena was in shock and didn't understand anything. She was very angry with us and one prince because she thought that all these problems were only from him. And then she found out that she was invited to the palace, so she was very interested in who invited her. The maid informed her that His Highness the First Prince had sent her an invitation, which surprised Elena even more. It seemed he wasn't joking about the tea after all, and he really didn't look like the prince she knew. In his letter, he wrote that he would like to invite Milady to the palace. The maid could not believe that she had become friends with His Highness the First Prince. Elena noted that she would not say that this is friendship. They are not friends, not even comrades. It is very strange on his part to make such invitations. He invited the bride of his brother, with whom he has a bad relationship, so it may be sad for him. A short description of the characters from the novel. The girl remembers most of the nuances of this world, so there was no need to write it down. But who knows? Maybe she will forget something. so it's better to keep everything on paper, even if it doesn't help. Now the girl understands the problem. The details of the novel have changed. Yes, until recently, the only time changes occurred was when she changed her behavior. But for some reason, the first prince became so different. Perhaps a question mark with the incident he experienced. Or he became the same as her. And if her suspicions were correct, then he too could notice something strange in her. Elena realized that no matter how much she thought, she would not be able to find an answer. So it was time to act, and she needed to understand whether the prince had changed only because of the incident or because someone had possessed him. To begin with, she decided to respond to the invitation. And in the end, they met only 2 days later. Mother burst into Elena's room and asked if she wanted to have some fun with her. The girl didn't mind her mother coming into her room. It looked like she was going somewhere. Elena told her mother that she needed to go somewhere, and her mother brought cookies to eat with her. So she got upset, and her mother asked her to look, because these cookies looked like her. Now her mother loved her so much, as if she had become the best daughter in the world. Although she was just a child to whom she could not show her love. Elena promised to try not to be late, and then she would definitely spend time with her mommy. Mother was delighted and said that in that case, she would be waiting for her with joy. To deal with the general, you first need to deal with his horse. But this does not mean that Mom is a horse. After her persuasion, Dad almost stopped arguing with her, and in general he sometimes gets angry because of his bad character, or just like that. But in such moments when she is near him and turns to him, she always tries to protect her. And now she begins to feel that she is truly her real mother. Mother also asked where Elena was going. Elena said that she was going to go to the Imperial Palace. Mother was in complete horror. I did not understand whether she heard the correct answer. The girl understood and told her mother that she had misunderstood and that she was not going to the crown prince. Mother didn't understand why you were in her palace then. And then she told you that she had a meeting with the first prince. The prince was very glad to see the lady and told her to come through and not to be shy. He also noted that the lady was especially beautiful today. Elena was very grateful for the compliment and noted that she was flattered. As expected, in fact, she did not just decide to dress up. She did it in order to understand whether it was a real prince or not. It was someone else. There were fewer and fewer doubts. A real prince would have fallen off his feet from shock. This one is very grateful that she agreed to come. The lady noted that it was a great honor, and she would not refuse it for anything. The first principal noticed that she really likes to flatter. The girl did not understand what she was expecting. She cannot be rude, and it is also very interesting what will happen next. He heard that she became the heir to the duchy, so he asks to accept his congratulations. Elena is very grateful to His Highness for such statements. I was wondering what it was like, and she didn't even know. Now she only hopes that she won't create problems for the empire and the family. Everything came down to a useless dialogue. It would be easier if he showed his true self. Apparently, he is not going to yet, because he says that she will be of great help to the empire. Now it's her turn, and she notices what she's wanted to say for a long time, but never dared to. It seems to her that he's changed a lot. The man was surprised and asked again, and the lady noted that he was not at all like the one she had met before. The gentleman was surprised and asked again. What was the lady talking about earlier? Well, if he was interested, they had seen each other before their previous meeting. The prince agreed that this seemed to be true, but the lady was shocked that she would say such a thing so easily. He also heard that she had become a different person. The lady was amused by the fact that he was shifting the blame, and she remarked that she wondered how much he thought she had changed. The prince believed that she knew better, because for him she was still the same. Well, at least she's smarter solo, and it's a bit of a shame that this is only being talked about now. Principal noted that if she became smarter, then the same could be said about him. He asked if he was telling the truth, and the lady could not help but agree with him. After some small talk, Elena said that it was time for her to go, and the prince was surprised that she was already leaving. Elena has other things to do, so he may not see her off. She completely forgot she cooked something, nothing special, but she hopes he likes it. Her maid also baked the cookies, so she wants to provide him with this delicacy. The gentleman was surprised when he received the cookie and remarked that he was just looking for something to snack on, so it was very sweet of her. In principle, I didn't understand what kind of cookie it was, so I immediately snatched it from the assistant's hands. Dane didn't understand what had happened and believed that the lady had written something offensive to him. The prince laughed and noted that it was difficult to say since nothing was clear yet. Even his younger brother, whom he considered the closest person to him, eventually killed him in order to gain power. I haven't decided yet whether they will become allies, even though they come from another world. It is unclear why she came, and the last thing is strange, is that she left quickly. He didn't know if it was bravery or recklessness, but it was definitely unusual, because in the note she asked who he was. He wondered what her intentions were and what she had in mind. Whether her existence would be an obstacle to his plan was not yet clear. Perhaps she would be useful, perhaps she would be a blessing, but he was not sure yet. Several days had passed since she had given the letter to the prince. Elena had thought that he would answer faster. Now it seemed to her that perhaps she should have written something else. Perhaps she should have composed a different message, because the prince might not understand her if it was in a language unfamiliar to him. This worried her more and more. Elena expected an answer immediately, but more than 3 days passed. Now she thought that perhaps she had been too impatient and should wait at least a month. If there is still no answer after a month, Elena will understand that she was wrong and will leave everything as is without worrying anymore. At that moment, a maid came up to her and handed her a letter. Elena cried out, asking who it was from, and impatiently asked for it to be brought quickly. The maid realized that her mistress was probably expecting news from someone important, and she handed over the letter with relief, not hiding her curiosity. When Elena began to read, her eyes lit up. The maid, seeing her reaction, thought that this was exactly the answer that the mistress was waiting for. Elena noted a little that this was not quite what she expected, but still the news was good, and she happily asked the maid to bring a feather and perfume. A few days ago, Elena decided to join one of the tea parties to better understand how things are going in society and to learn about new rumors. She thought that if she didn't attend such events, she wouldn't learn anything new, so she decided to participate, hoping to gain information. However, the meeting turned out to be a little different from what she had imagined. The ladies discussed personal matters, relationships with men, and behaved like high school girls, which surprised her a little. Elena noticed that Lady Rosaria looked a little displeased, but the lady herself assured her that it was nothing special, just nostalgia for her youth. Elena noted that she had not been able to attend such meetings for a long time, and on the contrary, she was very happy to be present at this event. The atmosphere was pleasant, and the lady suggested sharing something interesting. Elena was glad, because now she had the opportunity to change the topic of conversation. She had long wanted to discuss the situation on the continent, and to ask the lady's opinion on how the policy of the empire would develop. It would be interesting to hear. Or perhaps they wanted to talk about more pressing issues, like rebuilding the area that suffered from the famine. Last year, Elena was willing to discuss any topic. She also wondered if the tax laws for the natives should be relaxed a little. Elena thought the lady might have her own ideas on that. After a few minutes of thought, she realized that the topic of political discussions might not be appropriate for the meeting, so she decided to talk about something else. Elena mentioned a new dessert shop that had opened on their territory. Many ladies were interested in this news, and the lady was pleased to note that the establishment's reputation was already highly appreciated. Suddenly, one of the ladies turned to Elena and introduced herself. It was a woman whom the lady did not recognize at first. Her face seemed familiar to her, but the name was new. The lady introduced herself as Bella Chatterjee and congratulated Elena on becoming the heir to the duchy. This was unexpected for her, and Elena felt surprised by such words. Elena noticed that Bella seemed genuinely happy for her, and she wondered how serious her congratulations were. It was a moment that made her wonder about her new acquaintance's intentions. Bella really did congratulate her sincerely, and Elena realized that it was nice to hear kind words when they came not only from loved ones, but also from those you were just beginning to get to know. Elena thanked Bella Chatterjee for her congratulations, and was soon joined by other ladies who congratulated her as well. The lady was touched and felt that these words strengthened her confidence. However, suddenly one of the girls sitting next to her unexpectedly interrupted the conversation and also expressed her congratulations, but there was something cold and insincere in her tone. Elena felt that there was something else hidden behind the words. Rosetta's face twisted with the sudden impact as she spoke. Her voice was menacing, and her eyes were full of irritation. Elena realized that something was wrong and remained on guard. Rosetta, almost hissing, said that the lady had better keep quiet for her own sake. This sharp attack immediately interrupted the conversation, and a tense silence fell in the room. One of the strong blows to Rosetta's pride was so unexpected that she immediately fell silent. Elena, watching what was happening, felt how the atmosphere in the room became tense and cold. Rosetta's face twisted into a wicked smile. Her lips thinned and her eyes filled with rage. She tried to hide her aggression, but the tension in the room was palpable. Rosetta's lips curved into a curved line as she met Elena's cold gaze. The mistress spoke calmly to her, ordering her to look her straight in the eyes and calm down. Rosetta, proud and self-assured, was the heiress of the Marquis of Tennessee and had always considered herself an important figure in society. She had long been accustomed to commanding and expecting respect, but now she was met with hostility. Although Rosetta was still an assistant in the family business for the time being, her influence was invaluable. But with Elena's arrival in the business, she could no longer afford such power. The lady was willing to admit that Rosetta had once played an important role in her life, but now that she had become the heir, her ambitions and desire for leadership needed to be rethought. Elena noted with restraint that she apologized for the late congratulations, but perhaps she had not managed to reach out earlier due to being busy. She wondered if Rosetta would be able to forgive her for this offense. Elena wondered if she would be able to find a common language with Rosetta, because she was a famous person, and although a little shy, always tried to look confident and influential in society. Elena was shocked by such statements, because it was funny to hear that she was shy, because it seemed like she decided to appear, because all the attention went to Elena. Vagina, without a tiger, rabbits rule. She is not happy that her place was stolen, and hope that she will say that everything is fine. Apparently, from the outside, she looked like she was having fun, but she will always find time for a lesson. Elena said that she, of course, forgives her, and that is why the lady was very surprised. The lady asked again, and Elena said again that she forgave her for ignoring her and not approaching her earlier. She got angry. The girl was not happy because this was not at all what she wanted. Elena noted that she was even upset. Their relationship had been a little tense lately. This is what made her want so much for her to be the one to congratulate her first, but she did nothing because she did not dare to approach. He had never seen Elena talk to anyone like that. The lady noted that, however, after hearing the lady's congratulations, everything vanished as if by magic, and she was glad that she came here, so she was very grateful to her. The lady noted that she was very glad that she was able to lift her spirits and relieve her of unnecessary thoughts. The lady with yellow hair remarked that she was sorry that everything had turned out this way, and she did not want to upset the mistress at all. Elena noted that she, of course, believed her, but in fact, she was interested in whether people didn't like this awkward situation. After all, she was sure of it. It seems that Elena doesn't even know how long she spent gaining authority among the nobility, and thinks that it will all be taken away from her so easily. The lady noted that, by the way, Lady Elena was not at the meetings, then that she even began to worry nothing happened, and probably it was none of her business, but she wondered where the lady had disappeared too. Elena noticed that she was trying to attack the person in a rather mean way and pretended to be worried, and that everyone already knew from rumors so she was interested in what she would achieve. So she decided to play along with her. Elena said that nothing special, she just threw herself into her studies in order to become an heiress. The lady smiled and asked why she hadn't written anything, since she was so worried about her, since there had been so many strange rumors while she was away. The ladies hesitated and hoped that she was not going to talk about it here, because there were a lot of strange rumors, and they thought it was very low of her. The lady noted that she, of course, did not believe in them. But when people began to say that she was crazy, everything changed. But suddenly, Elena interrupted her and asked if Lady Tennessee had spoken about it on purpose. The woman pretended not to understand what was she talking about. Either she wondered why she was ruining the tea party and the other girls with such nonsense, or she was simply mistaken. Elena was angry because she was making fun of her because she was afraid to attack her head-on. It seems that this is how she decided to bring her to it. I was wondering what she would do. It seems she would say that it was just a mistake and apologize. Her position among the nobility would fall anyway. Suddenly, one girl remarked that perhaps the lady had made a mistake, and she thought she should apologize to Lady Rosaria. The lady thought that this was really too much, and she should ask for forgiveness. The woman listened to this and was very angry. Everyone had gone over to Elena's side, and there was no point in trying to somehow hush it up, so she apologized and noted that she had gotten herself into trouble with her. Elena said that it was okay, because she forgave her this time too. A few days later, the Duchy of Rosaria, Elena, was pleased to welcome Lady Rendor and Lady Chatterjee. The ladies were very grateful for the invitation, and it was a part of it for them. The main characters of this letter came to the Duke's estate. Some were sitting in Elena's personal library, and the lady noticed that this time the tea was very aromatic, so she suggested that they drink it quickly before it cooled down. The lady noted that it turned out that this was her personal library. Elena said that most often she works or studies here. The lady remarked that she had been in many houses, but had never seen such beautiful rooms. I guess all heirs are supposed to have something like this, so it's really cool. There are a lot of books here, even more than in their library. Lilac didn't care how much they could envy, be surprised, admire. It wasn't for nothing that she prepared the treat. The maid did not understand why the bear decided to bring everything here, because she thought it would be better to receive guests in the drawing room of the main building. Elena would have done so at normal times, but not today, because there was something she wanted to show them. She was surprised and did not understand what she was talking about. In advance, she asked the butler to bring her some document for appearance's sake when they arrived. So the gentleman entered the room and informed the bear that he did not want to disturb her, but the matter required her consideration. Elena said that there was nothing wrong with it, so she invited him to her place. She started to explain something to him there, so the ladies were simply delighted. After all this, Elena said that everything was fine, and he should convey that it could be left like that. Elena apologized that she had to take on the honor of the Duke's duties, and she did not know that it would turn out this way. She was already very interested in how they liked her image of the heiress. The girls started saying that everything was fine, and she looked very serious, and it was just wonderful. They admired her very much and called her little sister, so the lady was a little surprised by such an address. The lady said that overall there was nothing to worry about, because they were only happy to see her new look. Elena was pleased to hear this. In fact, she wanted them not to stop at just this, and to open up more of their desires, something from the heart. People noticed that, however, she correctly understood that she became the heir of this being the only daughter of the Duke. Elena was delighted because it was a bull's eye, and she simply invited such people to me, partly because they were the ones who treated her best at the last tea party. But they also have talent and something in common. Rebecca Rendor is the second child of the Count Rendor family. Her lineage has controlled a huge number of merchants for generations, and the profits from the small business she runs at the age of 15 are simply unimaginable. Bella Chatterjee Although she is only 14 years old, born into a baronial family of famous explorers, she has an amazing photographic memory. What unites them is that they are in many ways superior to the eldest sons, the heirs of the families. But one must always turn a blind eye to the daughters. Elena asked the lady why she thought so. The girl said that it was because there were no other children in the family besides her. In other cases, the heir is usually the eldest son. Elena noted that the law was amended so that other children could also become heirs. Rebecca agreed with her. It was a strange choice because not everyone was willing to go against tradition. Rebecca agreed with this addition from Bella. Elena noted that it is precisely traditions that she cannot stand, because if she has abilities, then nothing prevents her from becoming the heir. Having demonstrated her skills, she proudly took this place. It turns out that all her evil deeds, or rather throwing, were connected with the thought of the gentleman of the place of the heir. Elena noted that this was true, and she remembered how she was beside herself when it became known that her cousin could become the heir of the Rosary family. There is still one to remember about it, but suddenly people noticed that she had nothing to be ashamed of. If she were in her place, she would have behaved exactly the same way. And the main thing is that she quickly realized everything and changed. Now she is a real role model. Elena didn't even expect such a reaction from them, and noted that after their words, she was convinced because her efforts were not in vain. And it was so nice to hear that the meeting went much better than Elena had expected. This completely changed her impression of the two of them. In addition, she then told them that she liked people who knew their strengths and actively used them. At first, they did not understand what she was talking about. The lady said that she would like them to know that she is always ready to help those who want to reveal their talents, and it does not matter whether it is a man or a woman. Elena's words lit a fire in their hearts, although now they still do not fully understand the meaning, but soon they will understand everything, and then they must come to her for help. The lady noticed that a heavy downpour had begun, but the sun had been shining just recently. At the same time, Count Rendor's estate. The father told his son to go to the library after he finished eating. Rebecca told her father that she would like to go to the library with her brother too. The boy didn't understand what she was talking about. Rebecca would also like to learn how to trade correctly. And don't think that these are just words. She has evidence that she is also worthy of learning. She does not understand what is wrong with them. The brother asked if she meant to say that she was going to compete with him for the position of heir. He could not believe that she could lay claim to his position, since he had always considered her less qualified. Rebecca replied, with restraint, that such a thought had never even occurred to her. She was not seeking an inheritance, but simply wanted to improve her knowledge and help her family by doing things that interested her. The father, not hiding his displeasure, declared that their family life was going smoothly, and her words had ruined everything. Irritated, he stood up to leave, feeling that Rebecca had ruined the atmosphere of a good evening. The brother, not hiding his sarcasm, asked if she had decided that her ability to manage a small business was sufficient to qualify her as heir. It seemed that he was ready to leave because he was disappointed with her actions. Enraged, the brother grabbed all her papers and documents and threw them on the table, declaring that she should not bother with such trifles because her dreams of inheritance were ridiculous and absurd. Rebecca was shocked by this behavior, especially in relation to her work. She could not understand why her family treated her like this, despite her efforts and desires to help the family. Her mother, noticing her uneasiness, came over and asked her point blank if she really thought her knowledge of mathematics made her worthy of becoming an heir. Rebecca felt that her intentions had been misunderstood. The girl began to justify herself, saying that she had never claimed the title of heiress. But her mother interrupted her, emphasizing that it did not matter whether she wanted it, if her greed and ambition could no longer be hidden. The mother once again demanded that Rebecca think carefully about her behavior, adding that she must get rid of the shop, otherwise the consequences would be unpredictable. This was her last chance to change her behavior. Rebecca couldn't hold back her tears. She remembered Elena's words about how she was always ready to help those who wanted to discover their talents. These words were the only source of comfort for her. The rain that was starting to pour became even heavier, and Rebecca decided to go for a walk. However, the maid reported that she had a guest, and this was an unexpected surprise for her on such a rainy evening. Elena was puzzled, not understanding who had decided to come so late and in such a storm. She expected that the guest should have warned in advance, but she could not figure out who it could be. The maid clarified that it was Lady Rendor. When Elena saw her, she was shocked. Finding herself in front of a woman in such an upset state, she realized that something had happened. Rebecca was crying, and the maids were trying to calm her down. The girl was turning to Elena with a request whether it was possible for her to help her in a difficult situation. There was despair and hope in her eyes. Rebecca apologized for the lateness of her visit, but Elena gently replied that she saw nothing wrong with it and asked what had brought her to this state. There was genuine concern in her words. Rebecca confirmed her feelings and added that she was very ashamed that she had disturbed Elena at such a late hour, but she hoped that everything would be fine and that her worries would be understood. Elena felt that something serious had happened and anxiously asked Rebecca to tell her what had happened. She had a feeling that the problem might be related to inheritance and family issues. Rebecca began to tell what she expected to hear. She spoke of her worries about the inheritance her family and how she felt disconnected from what was going on in her home. Elena listened calmly and said that unfortunately she could not help with inheritance issues. She advised Rebecca to think again about what was important in her life and what she could do for herself. Rebecca realized to her surprise that she had been hoping for help too much. Even though she knew she shouldn't have high expectations in this matter, still she was grateful for the attention. Irina asked Rebecca not to take her words as a refusal, since this did not mean that she was not ready to help her with other issues. Elena suggested looking for other ways of support, more realistic and accessible. Rebecca was a little puzzled. She didn't quite understand what was going on, but Helena explained that the right to inheritance was a matter that even the emperor couldn't interfere with, but there were other ways to solve her problem. Rebecca was thrilled to be supported and felt relieved. Her eyes sparkled with gratitude, and a bright smile appeared on her face, which had been rare lately. But before everything was settled, Elena asked Rebecca to evaluate her role in the family. She was interested not just in helping, but in how the girl sees herself and what she expects from her life. Rebecca thought about it and began to remember her childhood. First, she learned to count and then to read. This knowledge was always important to her, and it became the basis for her understanding of the world. Her favorite place was the market, where she saw money passing through hands and always felt the hidden power in it. The market became her teacher, its dynamics and movement became her guiding star. Rebecca was confident in her abilities, considering them part of her family's history. She believed that she was worthy of bearing the Rendor name and aspired to bring it fame and success just like her ancestors. Elena was pleased to hear that Rebecca now understood the importance of her knowledge and capabilities. She acknowledged that the girl did have potential and suggested her next step. She asked Rebecca to open the letter she was holding. The letter contained a cryptic clue, one word, tomato, which became Rebecca's first step to future possibilities. Elena thought about it and felt that they would soon encounter some difficulties. But despite this, she was pleasantly surprised by Rebecca's intelligence, who in fact already guessed what was what. Elena continued to explain that there would soon be a shortage of food supplies and that the imperial palace would soon receive a delegation from another country to conclude an important trade deal. The deal concerned the supply of tomatoes, and its scale was truly grandiose. The increase in trade volumes exceeded %. It was a unique opportunity, and Elena predicted that it could play a key role in the future. Rebecca was truly grateful for this valuable information. Remembering how her family had treated her, she knew that it would be difficult for her to succeed in this situation, but she still wanted to try. Despite her gratitude, Rebecca was filled with doubts, not believing that she was capable of handling such an important matter. She felt insecure, realizing how difficult the situation was. Elena, surprised by her doubts, asked what was stopping her. When Rebecca replied that funds were limited, Elena, not losing hope, proposed a solution that, in her opinion, would be quite sufficient. She was confident that Rebecca would be able to benefit from the support of her family, since Rosary was known to have enormous wealth, and she did not have to worry about financial difficulties. Elena noted that even after covering all necessary expenses, Rebecca would have enough money to implement her plans. This support opened up great opportunities for her. Elena confirmed that this would be her help. She assured Rebecca that now that her abilities were recognized and appreciated, she would be able to develop her talents to the fullest, not limit herself to just a little. Rebecca felt an incredible sense of relief. This was what she had been dreaming about for so long. Her efforts had finally been appreciated, and tears of emotion came to her eyes, bitter but also full of gratitude. She realized that it was the lack of support from her family that was making it so difficult for her to discover her abilities. Elena asked again what Rebecca was going to do. Rebecca confirmed her words and noted that there was no need to worry, because her help would definitely not be in vain. She assured that she could cope and would not leave Bella in trouble. Her confidence was palpable, and this calmed the girl down a little. Elena, still hesitant, asked if she could really handle such a task. Rebecca smiled and noted that of course she could. She was confident in her abilities and willingness to help, and her confidence inspired hope. Now the easiest part remained. Mother was very angry with Rebecca because she could not understand where she was. All this time, the daughter remained outside the house, and the mother was worried. This behavior led to strong experiences in the family. The girl lowered her head and humbly asked her mother for forgiveness. She was very sorry that her hot temper had caused trouble and worry to both her mother and brother. Rebecca sincerely regretted and felt guilty for what had happened. The mother wanted to believe that these were not empty words and that her daughter was truly sorry. She watched her expression and tried to understand how sincere her apology was. It was important that her daughter understood the gravity of her actions and corrected her mistakes. Rebecca backed up her words, adding that her business would now be over. She decided to put it all behind her and focus on mending her relationship with her family and getting back to normal life. The mother was simply delighted and proudly noted that her daughter was doing well. She praised her for her determination and willingness to correct her mistakes. For her, this was a sign that her daughter was growing up and becoming a more responsible person. Mother thought that Rebecca must be very tired after everything that had happened. She suggested that her daughter take a little rest to regain her strength. She wanted her daughter not to be overwhelmed and to be able to rest after the excitement she had experienced. The mother's gentle hand touched her daughter's shoulder. It was a gesture of care and love that always came at moments when Rebecca obeyed and fulfilled her mother's whims. Only then could she feel warmth and support. The home Rebecca could live in was the place where she could find peace, but only if she followed the demands of others without question. Her mother believed that this was the way it should be and saw no other way for her daughter. Rebecca thought that if this was going to continue, she would rather give it all up than spend another day in this house. She decided that she would live by her own rules from now on, and they would see it. Very soon, the Rendor family, which they are so proud of, will be hers. Rebecca felt that this moment was already close. She is sure that in the future, she will take her place among the great personalities and bring pride to her family. The ladies noted that it was really very beautiful here, and they had not even imagined that they could see such a beautiful greenhouse. They were pleasantly surprised by its atmosphere and green corners, which created an impression of coziness and privacy. Elena was very pleased that her guests appreciated the greenhouse, and she happily invited them in. She had not seen Lady Rosaria for a long time, and now they were having a nice time together. Elena was grateful for such praise. Lady Rosaria's greenhouse was truly stunning, and the owner herself gratefully accepted the compliments. Her efforts and love for plants are evident in every corner of this natural corner. She was glad that her guests appreciated her work. There was also a new lady in their company named Mabel Erna from the county of Erna. This lady was rather shy, but her presence added a note to the atmosphere. Mabel seemed a little timid, but this did not prevent her from participating in the conversation. Mabel was very shy, but her interest in plants was obvious. She was the girl who could help the main character in the fight against the epidemic that broke out in the Empire. Remembering the original story, Elena decided to meet her more often. Just like in the original story, Mabel was an avid flower lover, which is why Elena invited her to her greenhouse. It was a place made for nature lovers, and Mabel clearly enjoyed every minute she spent there. Elena decided it was time to start a conversation and said that she was so glad that they liked her greenhouse. But compared to the secret garden of the first prince, it was nothing. She could not help but mention such an amazing place as Lloyd's garden. Mabel was very surprised when she heard about the first prince's secret garden. She had never heard anything like it, and her interest immediately increased. Elena was pleased because she managed to interest the girl with such an unusual story. Mabel said that she had recently visited the garden, and it was a place with many plants that she had never seen before. Everything there was completely unusual, and she was in awe of how many rare and unique species could be found there. The lady noticed that she had heard rumors about the first prince's garden. She was especially attracted by the rare plants that were mentioned in these rumors. This was a real discovery for her, and she decided that she definitely wanted to visit this garden. In fact, Lloyd's garden was the place that Rosetta told Mabel about in the original story. The plants found in this garden became the raw material for creating a cure for the worst epidemic that was about to spread across the empire. Mabel, who developed the medicine from these plants, gave all the credit to Rosetta because it was she who showed her the garden. It was a great thing. And although Mabel deserved the credit, she was ready to leave everything in the hands of Rosetta, considering her a mentor. Elena was shocked to hear that this was true. She immediately realized that perhaps she should ask the first prince for the opportunity to visit his garden. This could be an important step for their common cause, and Elena did not want to miss this chance. Mabel was absolutely delighted and immediately asked if it was true that she could visit this garden. She could not believe that she would have such an honor and waited impatiently for confirmation. Her eyes were shining with admiration and gratitude. Elena confidently said that of course she could visit the first prince's garden and added that she would send a letter to her residence. Once she knew the exact date, Mabel couldn't believe her luck, but she was happy that her dream was about to come true. The question of stealing credit did not bother Mabel. Of course, she was a little ashamed of using other people's ideas, but she considered it a matter of life and death. Therefore, all her doubts disappeared in the face of a more important goal. Mabel was obviously in love with plants and had heard from Lady Randor that she was well versed in medicinal herbs. This further strengthened her interest in the owner of the greenhouse, and she was ready to learn from her everything she could know. Elena assumed that Mabel aspired to be a doctor, but it soon became clear that this was not the case. In fact, her dream was to become a researcher. She wanted to learn more about plants and their capabilities in order to apply her knowledge in practice. Bella was a little surprised and noted that the reputation of researchers is not as great as that of doctors. However, Mabel replied with a smile that she knew about it. She did not care how her work would be perceived. The main thing was that this was her true calling. Mabel noted that if she could create new drugs, such fame would be much more pleasant. Her desire for achievement was sincere, and she was confident that she would make a great contribution to medicine, despite her humility. Elena was shocked by Mabel's pure intentions, almost feeling inferior in comparison. Noting that Mabel seemed like a true explorer, she said she would support her if she needed help. Elena was willing to help. Bella promised to support Mabel in her endeavors. Apparently, she motivated her, and soon Mabel felt that her dream was becoming a reality. Every day, she became more confident in her path. Bella sat in her room and thought about how wonderful Lady Ern was. Bella admired her self-confidence and her desire to achieve her dreams. She was amazed that Mabel could speak so openly and boldly about her goals. Bella was kind of envious because she also wanted to talk confidently about her business, about her dream. But she didn't have that clarity. She felt like a person who was just floating with the flow of life, not knowing what she was striving for. Bella began to wonder if maybe she needed to make some changes in her life. She wanted to have a purpose to follow and to feel confident that her life was not empty, but filled with meaning and direction. But she didn't want to look gloomy or unhappy. Bella decided that she needed to find her own path, not worry about her path being different from someone else's, but rather think about what she could do. Bella always loved reading books. She enjoyed receiving new information and was eager to learn more about the world. For her, books were not only a way to relax, but also a source of inspiration and new ideas that could shape her future. She wondered how she could use all this knowledge she had gained from books to make herself useful. Maybe she could write down her thoughts, taking notes on what she read, to better understand what directions she might be interested in. But to be more specific in her thoughts and goals, she might need someone's help. Bella thought again and remembered her recent conversations with Lady Rosaria and Mabel Ern. A few days later in the Duchy of Rosaria, Bella met the lady again. She approached Elena and said that she needed to ask for advice. There had been changes in her life, and she felt the need to talk about her future. Bella said that she had been thinking about her future a lot lately. Inspired by the conversation between Lady Rosaria and Mabel Ern, she realized that she also wanted to do something to change something in her life. Elena listened to her with interest and remarked that it was wonderful that Bella was thinking about her future. She said that she was always ready to help if Bella had any questions or felt that she needed guidance. Bella, a little embarrassed, admitted that her idea seemed strange. She asked Elena not to laugh at her request. Despite her shyness, Bella wanted to talk about her idea. Elena smiled and said confidently that she would not laugh. She assured Bella that she was ready to listen to her and that even the most unusual ideas could make sense if they truly reflected her true desires and aspirations. Bella said she came up with the idea of starting a rumor shop. Her idea was to collect the knowledge and rumors that people spread and use them to teach others. So she wonders, what about rumors? They are just stories that pass from person to person, and they contain a lot of information. For example, if there is a thief wandering around, you need to be more careful. If you look at it on a larger scale, that is information about market movements and the international situation. Information is power, even in negotiations or trade between countries. If you know rumors about a country in advance, it will become much easier to negotiate. Elena noticed that it looked like a storage of information, and she thought that she would hesitate because she had no particular reason, but she was smart enough to find her way right away. The lady said that everything was right, and Elena understood everything right away. So she thought it would be a good idea to set up a shop that collects and sells dried ones. It would definitely be worth more than just knowledge. Bella noticed that the lady was looking at her strangely. She began to think that perhaps she was too nervous and that this might seem silly. She decided that the woman might find her idea too bold or even absurd. But Elena said she was impressed by the idea. She thought it was wonderful, which surprised Bella. It was completely unexpected for her, and she couldn't believe that the lady had reacted that way. Bella was worried and could hardly ask again if it was true, and if she was joking. She was completely perplexed, not expecting such a serious attitude. It was a real shock for her. Elena said that it was a really great idea, and she was already thinking about how to develop it. She suggested first coming up with a name, collecting the necessary information. Elena assured that she would help with this and support Bella. Elena suggested that they discuss more precise points later, so that everything would be more correct. Bella could not believe that all this was happening, and that the lady was really serious. She thought that it was just a dream. The gossip shop, although it may seem absurd, actually has great potential. It is not just a place for conversation, but a real tool that helps to predict people's actions. For example, if a rumor about a quarrel in a married couple appears, those who know about it will avoid these people. This will help to avoid unpleasant situations and conflicts. It is important that the information is correct and timely. If the rumor concerns nobles who have power, the consequences can be much more serious. The conflict can develop into a political confrontation, and knowing such rumors in advance will give enormous power and the ability to influence the situation. In the case of the nobles, the conflict will not be limited to internal problems. It can involve wider forces, and if you know about such events in advance, you can use the information to your advantage. This gives you a huge advantage. Elena was stunned by how smart Bella was. She couldn't understand how she came up with such ideas. Elena decided to support her because she saw great potential in the girl and the ability to see important details. The next day, when the people noticed that the lady had invited them to this place, they were confused and did not understand what kind of place it was. They could not understand why they had gathered here, and this caused confusion. Elena said that here Bella would dream of her future. However, Bella could not understand what the mistress meant. It sounded like something mysterious, and she was curious to know what she meant by it. The rumor shop needs to be a place where people can come unnoticed. This requires a building with a secret entrance and exit. It needs to be easily accessible but hidden so that no one notices what's really going on. Rebecca noticed that they had been looking for a suitable location for Bella for a long time. She was sure that this was the place they were looking for. Bella agreed and also felt that this building was perfect for their idea. Bella suggested that they immediately sign a contract with the owner of the building, but Rebecca surprised her by saying that she herself was the owner of the building. This was a real surprise for Bella, and she could not believe her ears. Bella was shocked to hear this, and Elena reminded her that she had promised to support her. This was the moment when Bella realized that everything she had said was true. She felt that she really was not alone in this endeavor. Bella couldn't hold back her emotions and threw herself into Elena's arms. She was immensely grateful because now she had real support. Bella understood that with such an ally, her plans could become reality. In the evening, Elena asked the maid what her mother was doing, since they had not seen each other for a long time. She felt that her mother was probably bored and decided that it was time to meet her. Elena was worried about her mood and wanted to console her. The maid reported that Madame was currently spending time with a guest. This surprised Elena, as she had not known about the visit. Elena decided to find out who it was and why her mother had decided to receive a guest she had never heard of. As they approached the door, a man's laughter could be heard from behind it. Elena was stunned and could not believe her ears. She began to think that it could be the crown prince himself, and she wondered what was going on. Elena burst into the room and immediately apologized for her sudden appearance. She was completely shocked to see the first prince in the room. It was a real surprise for her, and she did not expect him to be here. The prince noticed that Elena could pass because he had been waiting for her for a long time. This statement only added more surprise to the lady. She could not understand how he had ended up here and why her mother was talking to him at this moment. Elena noted that coming without an answer to an invitation was clearly a sign of an enterprising character. He could not just come without plans and goals. This caught her attention, and she felt that his intentions were not simple. The gentleman said that after he received the note, he wondered if he should be a little more polite. It was a new experience for him because he usually didn't care about such things. He decided to be more polite. The guy told Elena his name and his past life, and this immediately made it clear that he was also Korean. Elena realized that he was not a random person, but someone who could be useful to her in the future. This added interest to their conversation. The prince asked Elena to be brave and tell him her former name. This was important so that they could open up to each other about their past lives and understand each other better. Elena, understanding his request, also told him her name. Lloyd knew right away that she was also from Korea. It was a great coincidence because now they could stop checking each other out and start sharing information. It gave them a sense of mutual trust, which was important for their relationship. Elena thought it was a great move and suggested they start with him. She was interested in finding out how much information he already had and how she could use it to her advantage. The prince was willing to share. Elena was curious about how much information this man knew and what benefit she could get from it. The prince noticed that she was trying to turn the conversation to her advantage, taking a comfortable position. He was ready for this. Elena noticed that she had come to this world earlier and therefore had gathered more information. She asked the prince to give in a little, as she knew more than he did. This was her advantage, and she decided to use it. She added that since she had arrived here earlier, she had managed to settle in faster and prepare everything she needed. Elena understood that her knowledge and experience would give her the opportunity to maneuver in this world. The prince could not help but agree with this. The prince was surprised and asked questions about the place they were in. He noted that the clothes and architecture were reminiscent of medieval Europe, which made him think even more about the reality of what was happening. The world was clearly different from what he knew. He supposed they might be in some fantasy world, like the ones in the movies. It was ridiculous, but he couldn't seem to find another explanation. His doubts grew even stronger. Elena confirmed that, in a sense, he was right. It really was a fantasy world. It was a world like in a novel where the rules and laws were different from the usual. She understood that it would be hard for him to get used to it. They exchanged information for a long time, but it was difficult for him to take it in. He was shocked by what was happening, and everything seemed absurd. However, he gradually began to accept the strangeness of the situation, even if it was difficult. The world of the novel they found themselves in was strange and unpredictable. The prince and the girl were the main characters, but their fates were already written. This put their entire future at risk, and Elena knew she had to find a way out. Lloyd admitted that the situation seemed ridiculous, but deep down, he knew that he might have to accept it. Everything was complicated and uncertain, and he needed to find a way to survive. It was a good sign that she had managed to convince him. Elena felt that the conversation would become easier, and they would be able to move forward. The prince probably also understood that they now needed to act together, not alone. Lloyd asked her what she was talking about, and Elena suggested that they team up. She saw that their fates were intertwined, and they needed to work together. She knew that this was the only way they could avoid their tragic fate. Elena pointed out that he didn't want to be the one who died in a cold room like the first prince. It was a warning sign for Lloyd that he needed to make a decision and not let that fate happen again. The gentleman agreed with her and added that no one would want to repeat such a fate. It was obvious to him, and he realized that they now had a common interest. They needed to work together for their future. So they decided to trust each other and work together. Elena asked if he was ready to make a pact, which was an important step for their further actions. This was the moment when their destinies could finally intertwine. Lloyd asked her what she meant, and Elena replied that a verbal agreement was not a real agreement. She emphasized that unless they put everything on paper, their plans and commitments would remain unwritten and fragile. Lloyd, despite his caution, still agreed. He was a man who had been betrayed by his own brother, and it was difficult to trust him. However, understanding the importance of the moment, he decided to sign the contract and continue the cooperation. They were both quite self-centered, and this showed in their negotiations. Each of them needed to be convinced of their own benefit, but in the end, they came to an agreement. It was a difficult but important decision for both of them. The contract included many conditions, the strangest of which was that the parties could keep their plans secret from each other. It was a condition that could be both an advantage and a threat in their complicated relationship. Elena asked if she was obliged to help, unless there was a special reason for it. The gentleman replied that help was required only if it would not harm her. This was a condition that allowed her to retain some freedom of action. She also asked if this meant she would be acting alone. The prince replied that it was more of an extra precaution than an isolation. He didn't want her to get into trouble, but he didn't want her to be completely committed to his plans. If the conversation turned to the points of the agreement, Lloyd suggested that from tomorrow she should come to him for tea at. Elena did not understand why this was necessary and why at this particular time, but she decided that it was not worth asking unnecessary questions for now. Elena couldn't understand what he was talking about and why it was so important that she come at this particular time. The gentleman said again that they could keep their plans a secret from each other. It seemed like part of a more complex strategy, and she had to get used to such conditions. It seemed like he had planned it from the beginning. So she said that she also hoped for his cooperation and could bring a lady to her garden at any time. So she asked him to greet her properly. Lloyd, of course, agreed with the proposal. Seeing no problem with it, he was sure that everything that was happening was logical and did not expect any difficulties. His attitude was calm and confident in the correctness of the situation. As promised, Elena continued to come for tea every day, but she did not understand what he was trying to achieve. Her anxiety grew, and she could not understand why he kept inviting her while remaining mysterious. The prince noted that it could be said that he hoped to catch something important, but Elena did not understand what he was talking about. It all remained a mystery to her, and she could not figure out what he really wanted from her. He avoided giving direct answers, and the lady hoped that eventually all this would lead to something big. She believed that her patience and persistence would yield results, but her doubts only increased. She could no longer wait and hoped that he would at least give a clear answer. Time passed, and since it was late, the prince wished her a good journey. Elena felt disappointed and was left with questions to which she received no answer. She was shocked that she was simply told to come back without any explanation. This made her angry, and she decided that she would deal with him later. She was not going to let this go unnoticed, and she would definitely pay him back. An idea had ripened in her head. She would still see how he would respond. She decided that she would definitely repay him this debt, and she would do it in her own way. Elena was serious and was not going to give in. At this moment, a servant came running with important news. A message had arrived from the imperial palace, and the emperor asked the prince to come to him. Lloyd realized that this was a chance and prepared to act immediately without missing the opportunity. Lloyd replied that he would go to the emperor at once. This was the moment when he could strengthen his position, and he knew he had to take advantage of it. He was determined to act. Lloyd entered the emperor's office and asked if the monarch had summoned him. The emperor noted that there had been rumors of frequent visits to his palace lately. He took note of this, and Lloyd did not hide the fact that he was dealing with an interesting person. Lloyd confirmed that the rumors were true and explained that his business involved a lady he had recently met. He described her as a woman with a strong personality who had her own way, which made the emperor raise his eyebrows in curiosity. The emperor, a little surprised, asked again who she was. Lloyd explained that she had luxurious red hair and that her character was difficult to call simple. He specified that she was not only eccentric, but also quite stubborn. Lloyd added that it might take much more time and patience to win her trust. According to him, she would not be so easy to tame. He seemed to be hinting at Helena, calling her a fox, which gave the emperor pause. The emperor was shocked that Lloyd was going to tame such a crazy woman. He laughed and suggested that it was all more of a joke, but then added that perhaps the prince could really handle the task. Lloyd replied, with a smile, that his mother had been able to tame wild animals, and as her son, he probably had a similar talent. He was confident that despite the difficulties, he would be able to cope with this task because everything would be under control. The emperor noted that it was a bold move to try to win the heart of the crown prince's fiancée. He also noted that it looked like a blatant provocation. and he wondered what exactly had made Lloyd make such a decision. He couldn't hide his curiosity. Lloyd replied that he didn't care what anyone thought of him, because he thought it would be more interesting that way. If he pretended to be smart, careful, and moderately loving, it would become a kind of game for him. All this should produce results. The emperor, examining his son, noted that his behavior must be cautious and calculating. He grabbed Lloyd by the hair and said that he had complained of a headache, and perhaps that was where the changes were hidden. This was obvious to the elder, and he was intrigued. The prince felt that the emperor was not only interested in his actions, but also trying to understand how serious and ambitious his goals were. At that moment, the emperor thought about the great future of his son and how high his aspirations were. The emperor, after a few minutes of thought, told Lloyd that he should return in a week for further negotiations. This was a sign that he did not reject his ambitions and was ready to discuss his plans. Lloyd bowed and promised to return. The prince left the office satisfied with the first step. He was glad that he had achieved his goal at this stage, and now his position was a little stronger. He knew that this was only the beginning and that he still had a lot of work to do. Lloyd was happy that everything had gone so smoothly. This was only the first step towards his plans, but already he felt that many things could change. He felt more confident, knowing that his efforts had not been in vain. The crown prince was absolutely horrified when he heard what had happened. He asked again who had actually entered the emperor's office, not believing his own ears. This event had come as a complete shock to him, and he could not believe that this was possible. Immediately having burst into the office, the crown prince began to ask his father how such a thing could have happened. He was furious, trying to figure out what caused such strange and, in his opinion, unacceptable behavior. The emperor was extremely angry, especially because it was morning and his son was already drunk. This irritated him greatly, and he could not understand why the heir was behaving so irresponsibly at such a time. He did not hide his displeasure. The father pretended to know nothing about what was happening and only continued to be angry. He was sure that even someone who did not deserve the title of emperor should not behave like this. The crown prince did not understand how he could participate in this meeting. The crown prince was filled with indignation. He could not understand how someone he considered insignificant could participate in such an important meeting. He was outraged and could not understand why such individuals were given the opportunity to influence the affairs of the empire. His father, noticing his doubts, mockingly asked him if he was confident in himself that he could judge what was happening. The crown prince, in turn, could not believe that his father allowed such people to participate in the discussions. He was at a loss and tried to find an explanation for this. The emperor asked the reason for his son's violent reaction. He noticed that he had come to him with an expression on his face that spoke of fear and uncertainty. The crown prince, feeling humiliated, replied that he did not understand what was happening in the family. The crown prince was convinced that he would one day regret his decision to allow these people to attend the meetings. He was sure that the situation would get out of control, and the emperor would eventually realize how wrong it was. The emperor, however, reassured him, saying that he did not regret his decision. He even laughed, assuring his son that he should not worry. The emperor was determined and said that they should continue to do their work. Normally, the emperor would have been pleased to see such monarchical behavior from his son. However, at this moment it began to irritate him a little. He felt that his son needed a little rest from political affairs, because too much ambition and pride are not always beneficial. In the end, the emperor didn't care what happened. He didn't care who would be next to him, whether it was a reserved man who preferred solitude with books or a libertine who lost himself in alcohol and women. The main thing was that the one who became emperor knew how to govern. It was important for the emperor that the heir could make the empire even stronger and richer. He wanted his son to be a real ruler, not just a figure on the throne. The empire needed a strong leader who would lead it to prosperity. Meanwhile, the first prince heard the crown prince being greeted outside the door, but he immediately sent everyone away. He was furious and did not want to see anyone. He felt that his authority had been undermined, and now he was trying to restore his dignity. At this moment, the crown prince burst into the first prince's room and snatched the book from his hands. He was so angry that he could not contain his emotions. He wanted to prove that his words mattered and that he still needed to be heard. The crown prince did not understand why his brother was behaving this way. He was sure that Lloyd simply did not realize his position. He was more than ready to show his brother that he had no right to such antics and should learn to respect his elders. The first prince, in turn, did not understand what his younger brother was talking about. He was even more irritated and asked how he dared to call him that. The crown prince felt that his patience had run out and was ready to take decisive action. The crown prince couldn't understand how his brother could do such a thing. At that moment, he felt that Lloyd had some kind of power that made him uneasy. Lloyd, meanwhile, noticed that his brother had a bad habit of being violent. He was not going to tolerate such behavior, but he tried to contain his emotions. He wanted to keep the last victory for himself and not give in to provocations. The crown prince thought Lloyd was crazy because he acted as if he was ready to merge with fools. He did not understand why Lloyd was interfering in his life and trying to stop him from being who he was supposed to be. It was a move he could not understand. The crown prince was willing to tolerate a life that seemed foolish to him, like his mother. But after becoming emperor, he wanted nothing to do with people like his brother. He believed that Lloyd was at his core nothing more than a pathetic worm. Lloyd wasn't going to listen to any of this. He was irritated by the crown prince's behavior and had no intention of obeying his words. He was going to show his brother that he wasn't interested in such humiliation and that he was ready to act. Lloyd sarcastically noted that the prince was apparently so drunk that he could not control himself. He recommended that he return to his chambers and calm down before the situation got out of hand. It was a kind of test for his brother. The crown prince was furious that Lloyd was so indifferent to his outrage. He considered his brother a scumbag for treating him like a child. Such behavior was completely unacceptable and humiliating to him. The first prince, despite his feelings, realized that the situation could not continue. He ordered his servant to take the second prince to his chambers. He did not want his brother to continue to stand before him and challenge him. The prince knew that they would see each other in 2 weeks at the main meeting. This fact did not add to his peace of mind. On the contrary, it only increased his anger. He could not accept the fact that his brother could participate in such important events, which he considered exclusively his own. His anger at his brother was so great that he began throwing things. He considered Lloyd impudent, and at that moment, his irritation crossed all boundaries. He swore that he would do everything to make sure that his brother would no longer dare to laugh at him and contradict him so openly. In anger, he ordered the Marquis of Tennessee to be summoned, although his servant was in complete shock and asked him again what he should do. However, the prince was determined, and without waiting for an answer, shouted for the servant to immediately carry out his order. The servant did not dare to object, and hurried to carry out the instructions. The prince was furious, and his anger knew no bounds. He understood that he had to act quickly to restore his dignity, and the help of the Marquis of Tennessee was to play an important role in his plan. At this time, Elena, who was nearby, was in complete shock from the person who came to her chambers. She did not expect a visit from such a person. She wondered what could have brought him here and how this person could be connected with the events taking place in the empire. The lady who entered the room introduced herself as Lady Lisa Tennessee. This was very strange for Elena, as she had heard that Lisa had long been leading a reclusive life, avoiding public meetings and societies. This visit seemed unusual and raised questions. Elena knew that Lisa had changed a lot recently and had become more secretive. She had heard rumors that her invitations to various events had significantly decreased. This made her visit even more mysterious. Overall, Elena realized that Lisa had come for some purpose. Although she couldn't immediately figure out what it was, she decided to be polite and asked her maid to invite the woman into her room. Liza, entering the room, immediately announced that she had arrived without prior arrangement, but was very grateful for the warm welcome. Elena, as always, treated this with understanding, despite the strangeness of the visit. Elena said that she had nothing to thank for because she would always be glad to see Lisa at any time. This was said sincerely, and Lisa felt that she had become easier. In response to such a warm attitude, she felt more comfortable and was ready to continue the conversation. Elena decided to show curiosity and inquired about the purpose of the visit. Lisa seemed to have come not just for a friendly chat, but with some important intention, and this made Elena pay more attention to her every word. Lisa, noticing Elena's curiosity, calmly explained that she had a very patient nature. She suggested having some tea so they could discuss everything calmly. This suggestion seemed quite reasonable to Elena. Lisa gently replied that she would prefer to discuss all the issues over a cup of tea. This was her way of preparing for a more serious conversation. Elena, hearing this proposal, agreed. In fact, this was the question Elena asked Lisa. It might seem shameless, but Elena genuinely wanted to return to the old, closer relationship they had before, and now she found it difficult to admit it. Lisa, in turn, admitted her stupidity. She realized that she had offended the lady with her words and actions, and now she sincerely asked for forgiveness for what she had done, hoping that she would understand her repentance. For Elena, this was more than she had expected. Her position in society was becoming increasingly precarious, and she felt that she was losing her position. Every day her influence was weakening, and she could not find a way to regain the respect she had lost. Elena thought that she urgently needed a lifeline, a person who would help her get out of this situation. Lisa, in turn, noted that their relationship in general had always been good, and there was no reason for alienation. Lisa suggested that she would do anything for Elena, as she had done before, but Elena herself began to doubt the idea. She felt that the conversation was empty and meaningless, and perhaps even devoid of any value. Elena felt that she needed a man who was ready to act decisively, even if it meant betrayal. She expected someone who would be ready to stab her in the back to check who was really next to her. Lisa could not understand her words. In response to this, Elena pointed out that Lisa was not as important to her as she thought. Lisa imagined that she played an important role in Elena's life, but in reality, her place was far from significant. Elena confidently stated that she did not consider Lisa as someone important, capable of changing her life. Lisa was very angry with such words and could not hide her indignation, feeling that her self-respect was humiliated. Liza angrily pushed away her mistress's hand and declared that Elena would regret her behavior. Her words were full of threats and resentment, but Elena was not surprised because she knew that it was difficult to maintain a relationship with Liza. Elena was not surprised to hear such words from Lisa. The woman said that their conversation was over and asked not to see her off. Elena remained calm, understanding that this conversation would lead to nothing. Elena, despite everything, wished Liza a good journey, and the same Marquis noted that it was a great honor for him that the Crown Prince came to visit him. He was flattered by this visit, despite all the difficulties in their relationship. The Marquis was slightly surprised to know what the prince had come to see him for. He knew something was wrong, but he still expected an explanation from the prince. He skillfully hid his curiosity and tried to find out the purpose of the visit. The Marquis knew perfectly well the reason why the prince had come, but he was curious as to how the prince would explain it. He hoped that the prince would tell him his intentions himself, plaintively asking for help, but he did not think that he would be frank. The lord could not believe that the vassal did not understand what his lord really wanted from him. It seemed strange, and the Marquis found it difficult to believe that His Highness had not yet revealed his plans and made his intentions known. The Marquis realized that the prince was not going to immediately lay all his cards on the table, and tell him the truth. This was obvious, and the Marquise felt that it was not in the prince's interests to be completely frank with him, which only added tension to their conversation. Perhaps the Marquis should have seen how the balcony would behave, how people would react to what was happening. He noted that His Highness Lloyd Picture was present at the meeting, which added interest to the event and made everyone pay closer attention to the situation. The boy warned the Marquis that if he said the name Picture after his name again, he would not let it go unpunished. He was determined and did not want anyone to humiliate him by mentioning his name in such a way. The Marquis realized that the prince was still too young to realize how important his position was. He tried to explain that the presence of the first prince was an order from the emperor himself, and the prince should understand the seriousness of such a statement. The prince did not quite understand what was required of him. He did not realize that His Highness actually wanted to tell him not to follow the emperor's order, which was a difficult and confusing question for him, giving no clarity. The prince promised that he would carry out the task and, at the Marquis's request, remove the first prince. However, it was not that simple, and the Marquis realized that this act would probably require great effort and complex maneuvers. As a Marquis, he was willing to go against the emperor's will to please the prince. He hoped that his actions would be appreciated, and he could use this moment to gain benefit, putting his whole soul into it. He also did not forget that he had a charming daughter, Liza, who had reached marriageable age. He hoped that perhaps this connection would help him strengthen his position, become a relative of the imperial family through the Empress's line. He was willing to play on all fronts, believing that the first prince's involvement would be useless to him. But despite this, he continued to pretend to be a patron and pretend to be interested in the prince's success while he continued to demand something in return. He dreamed of his daughter's engagement to the prince to strengthen his position and thought that it would bring him benefits. But he did not understand why he had to be involved with such a villain as Elena, and this put him in a difficult position. The Marquis was indignant, not understanding why he should be forced into an engagement with this woman whom he considered a villain. It seemed absurd to him, and he did not know how to act in this situation. He believed that the emperor's subjects, the Duchy of Rosaria, would be an excellent tool for strengthening his power if he took the throne. It was a strategic consideration that could play a key role in his plans. In other words, the Duchy of Rosaria was the perfect match for him to ally with to increase his power, but Elena suggested breaking off the engagement, which seemed like a real curse to him. He felt that Elena was out of place, too brash, and didn't understand her role. It amazed him, and he couldn't understand why all this had suddenly fallen on him, especially when he had so many problems. Although he was aware that something had changed in the way things were, he was irritated by it. Everything seemed different from before, and he felt that he needed to get rid of this uneasiness to find a way to regain his calm. Now he was sure that all his problems would disappear as soon as his older brother, who had always been in his way, would get out of the way. He was waiting for the moment when this man would finally leave his life. The palace of the first prince, Lloyd. There were many guests outside the palace walls. Now, these people could hardly be considered supporters of the prince, since their intentions were far from honest and sincere. When the prince was wounded by the air, these people disappeared, and now they returned as if nothing had happened. Their plans were obvious, but still the prince was curious to know what they were really up to. The prince wondered why he had been invited to the main meeting if he was only the emperor's abandoned son. He could not understand how a servant dared to block the way of such important guests. The men claimed that they were the prince's closest men and asked to be let through. But Dane asked them to stop explaining that His Highness was surprised by their visit and had ordered that the guests be invited in one by one. He added that if they waited, the prince himself would invite them later. At this point, everyone began to wait for when they would be able to meet the prince and find out what had really happened. As soon as the man left, the guests immediately surrounded him with questions about how the conversation went and what would happen next. Everyone was waiting for news and hoping that everything would soon become clear. They thought that His Highness had changed as expected. He had become more noble, confident, and mature. His gaze had become more determined, and his manners more refined, which confirmed that he had become more intelligent. The other man did not understand what everyone was saying, because he believed that the prince had remained the same. He saw no change in him, and considered all talk of change empty. For him, the prince had not changed. The man said he wasn't sure that change was happening. He tried to discuss economics, but the other man thought it was pointless, because his questions about time, or plum blossom, seemed silly. The man came out and said he was not sure about the changes that were taking place. The dialogue with the prince remained the same. There were no deep conversations. Everything was the same as before, without significant changes. When he entered the room, the valet offered him a seat, and he sat opposite the prince. The prince was silent, and they sat like that for about 10 minutes. Then the prince smiled and said goodbye as usual without further conversation. The prince not only smiled, but also demonstrated his sophistication and confidence. His gaze was deadly full of strength and determination. He showed that he was not afraid and was ready to act. It was curious why people perceived the prince differently. Some thought he had changed while others did not. This raised questions about why some saw him as a new person, while others did not notice the changes. The man said again that he was not sure if the prince had changed. He could not say exactly what had changed. Doubts continued to plague him, and he did not know what was really happening. They did not understand that the influence of the first prince was only important for their benefit. They supported the heir to gain benefits, but if the prince changed, it could change their position. If the prince has truly changed, the emperor will invite him to a meeting to personally check in. This will be an important moment to understand how the prince's changes may affect the future. It was difficult for them to make a decision because they did not know whether they would be able to maintain their privileges. In their eyes, the situation was uncertain, and they did not know what to do to avoid losing power. The prince noted that all this was expected. He saw in these people only emptiness, their desire for profit. They were not capable of anything real and important. Everything was just a game for the sake of interests. He expected at least one of them to prove useful, but all were in vain. Dane did not understand why the prince did not gather them all at once. Instead, he decided to act differently. The prince asked if Dane had noticed the expressions on the people's faces as they filed in. They tried to look proud, but soon they became humble, their confidence fading, and worry appeared on their faces. Dane confirmed that he had seen their reactions as he was accompanying them. Initially, they all seemed confident and proud, but soon their behavior changed. As time went on, they became more cautious and modest. Dane was shocked, realizing that the prince had deliberately shown them how he had changed. He had done this to show them how his personality had changed, and these changes were probably what had led to their confusion. The prince believed that they had come for a reason. They wanted to understand what was going on and find out what the prince was planning. It was part of their desire to control the situation after hearing the emperor's order. The prince noted that they had probably come to assess how best to proceed. However, according to the servant, they left even more confused, unable to understand what had happened. After all that has happened, they will most likely not be able to come to a common opinion. Different views and interpretations will only increase their doubts and lead to even greater discord within their ranks. Even if they start to agree on some issue, new problems will arise. The doubts that may arise will destroy their unity, and they will be forced to deal with contradictions and search for answers again. Ultimately, they will be confused and unable to make a decision. Each of them will feel insecure, and even if someone offers a solution, their support will be weak due to internal doubts and disagreements. The prince decided that it was worth giving them a chance to think about the situation and try to solve it. He hoped that this would make them think and not allow themselves to make a decision too easily. With this small action, the prince demonstrated his wisdom and strategy. His plan was well thought out, and His Highness understood perfectly how to make them think. The gentleman noted that this decision would leave them in an even greater impasse, facing uncertainty. This could lead to an even more difficult election than they had expected. Bella noticed that Elena was doing as she had hoped, and everything was fine. She felt that the situation was turning out well, and everything would be fine as she expected. However, the lady could not understand where they were and why everything looked so nice from the outside. She could not figure out what was happening, because at first glance, everything was too quiet and calm. She came here to buy props, but she couldn't understand why this store had such a strange name, like cheese. Everything seemed mysterious and not in line with her expectations of an ordinary store. The cheese was very stringy, and the information she was getting was also disjointed, as if it consisted of different parts. But eventually all this information came together as a whole, like cheese, and she could understand how it worked. The lady was surprised, but the girl was completely delighted. Everything that was happening seemed to be part of some strange interpretation, as if it were a dream, and everything was beginning to come together into one picture. Elena noticed that the store seemed to be open already, and she was curious about what to do next. She was ready to continue and figure out what to do in such an unusual situation. Bella suggested that they go inside first and wait for customers to show up. It was her way of testing how successful the store would be if they just sat and waited. The lady realized that Bella was wrong. She explained that they needed advertising to attract customers, not just sit and hope that people would come in. Advertising was the key to success. Bella couldn't believe that all this was really important. She was surprised because it seemed to her that just sitting and waiting was enough, but the lady objected to her pointing out the need for active actions. Elena asked if she thought clients would come if they just sat and did nothing. She questioned this approach and thought something needed to be done. But suddenly she noticed that several customers had come, probably interested in the new store. It was unexpected, but it seemed that people were starting to show interest in what was being offered. Elena greeted the boys, smiling and looking at them with interest. Then she asked if they had some free time that they could spare for her. The boy, a little confused, did not immediately understand what was being said and thought that perhaps she was an aristocrat. He tried to discern in her manners something more that would explain her behavior, because she did not look like an ordinary resident of this area. Elena called them over, explaining that she had a task they could help her with. She said confidently that she was not going to ask them to do anything illegal or unpleasant. The boys immediately began to refuse to steal or do any unsightly work. Elena noticed that the boy, despite his youth, was quite brave. He was not afraid to express his opinion, even knowing who she was. She appreciated his frankness, realizing that in the future this could be a very useful quality if he decided to work with her. She reassured them that they had nothing to worry about. She was just looking for someone who knew the area well and could help her sort out some things. To cheer them up, she gave one of them some money. The boys were simply stunned when they saw the money. They realized that it was real gold and were even a little confused by such generosity. Elena noted with a smile that the store they went into had just opened and at the moment had no customers. Elena went on to explain that there was actually an organization that collected all the rumors and gossip, and that she in turn bought this data. She also specified that she could share information that might be of interest to them. She offered that if they spread this information around the city, she would pay them 1 gold coin every day. It was a tempting offer, and the boys began to think about how they could use this chance to their own advantage. Elena added that the main key to success in the business of buying and selling information is its quantity. No matter how insignificant the rumor seemed, it was important that there was a lot of information and people had to think that it was valuable and reliable. It was important not only to gather information, but also to advertise the existence of such an organization. This played a key role because the more people talk about such a structure, the faster it will acquire rumors and clients. Elena noted that if they started spreading rumors about the organization, it would become a kind of advertising that would attract the attention of people from all over the city. It would bring in not only gossip, but also real money if the information was sold correctly. She urged the lady not to worry, assuring her that she would support her and help her in every way possible. This was a chance for both of them, and Elena was ready to provide assistance, including financial, so that everything would go according to plan. For safety, Elena put a mask on her to hide her face. She insisted that the lady always use a mask when communicating with clients. This was an important condition so as not to draw unnecessary attention to her identity. Elena explained that those who sell rumors and gossip often tell the most secret and sensitive stories. Therefore, it was critical for their safety that the lady's face remained unknown and her identity was not revealed. The lady understood the need for these safety measures and agreed to use the mask, but she expressed concern that customers had not yet arrived. She was worried that business had not yet recovered and there was still no customer in the store. However, suddenly a new client appeared. Elena immediately noticed that this was the first real visitor and decided that the lady should go out to him immediately. This was an important moment, and they could not afford to miss such an opportunity. Bella greeted the new client with a welcoming smile, trying to be friendly, despite her inexperience. The organization was just starting out, but she needed to impress her first clients to establish herself. The Marquis, restraining his interest, called his servant and asked him to sit down next to him. He intended to discuss an important matter and expected his servant to be prepared to listen attentively. This was a serious proposal, and the Marquis could not afford to be distracted. The Marquis did not waste time and decided to get straight to the point. He did not waste time on greetings, but moved on to important issues. The man sitting next to him agreed, realizing that there was something important to discuss, and listened willingly. The Marquis said frankly that he needed to get rid of the first prince before the plenary session. It was a crucial matter, and he wanted it done as quickly as possible. The man was surprised, but agreed to carry out the task. The man couldn't immediately understand what the Marge meant, and asked him if he was really talking about the first prince. He hadn't expected this turn of events, and was confused. It sounded incredible, and he wanted to clarify the details. The Marquis was taken aback by the man's question, and could not believe that he did not understand what was being said. He said that he was entrusting him with the task of dealing with this young prince, who, as it turned out, had locked himself in his room. It was not that difficult. Despite this, the Marquis noted that this prince was now receiving the attention of the Emperor himself. This made the task more difficult, and the Marquis began to doubt how safe it was to interfere in such matters, since it could have serious consequences. The Marquis expressed doubt that this was the same first prince he knew. The situation could have changed, and he was not sure that this was the same person as before. Many things could have changed recently. The man understood the Marquis's intentions and decided to support him, even if the situation was unstable. He was ready to take the Marquis's side, understanding that the heir to the throne, regardless of changes, still remains the heir. The Marquis was confident that if he could eliminate the first prince, it would greatly improve his position and pay off his debt. This gave him confidence, and he calmly continued drinking his wine, not particularly worrying about the consequences. At this time, the first prince was doing sports in his room. He did not know that his life was about to change and continued doing his usual things. All his attention was focused on his exercises, and he did not notice what was happening around him. Dane noticed that after a long time since he started working out, his body had become much more toned and strong. He was surprised by the results and thought with a little envy that he wished he was that slim and toned. The gentleman turned to Dane and asked if the item he had recently ordered was ready. The servant said that he had just received it and was about to show it to the gentleman so that he could evaluate the quality of the item. When he saw the thing, he immediately realized that it was a senseless luxury. The servant calmly replied that the earring was intended for his master, and that was why its manufacture required special attention and was not done anyhow. The guy noted that in Korean, such a thing could be called nonsense, that is meaningless luxury. He added that the earring perfectly matches the color of his eyes and actually looks very beautiful, despite its strangeness. Lloyd agreed that the earring was indeed well made and added that he would be out for a short time, but would be back soon. His words left Dane puzzled because His Highness was leaving without explanation, and this seemed unexpected. Dane was in shock and could not understand where His Highness could go so suddenly. He tried to comprehend what was happening, but everything seemed strange, and he did not know how to react to such unexpected behavior. Despite his loneliness and sadness, Dane decided not to let himself cry. He was determined not to show his emotions, and the only thing he wanted was for His Highness to somehow react to his presence. Noble children often held social tea parties where they socialized and exchanged many ideas. This meeting became not only a way for them to maintain their status, but also an important part of their life and upbringing. One of these meetings was the Noble Stag Club, which was held in the library. This club was famous among the aristocracy, and each meeting was perceived as an important and prestigious event that attracted the attention of many. The gentleman announced that today's discussion was over and everyone could leave. He noted that all key issues had been discussed and the meeting had come to an end, allowing all participants to relax and go about their business. Russell Cedric, eldest son of Count Cedric, was the leading figure at this gathering. This man was considered the central figure of all meetings and personified the importance of such events for high-ranking aristocrats. Suddenly, someone approached Russell and asked if he was the eldest son of Count Cedric. The question came unexpectedly, and Russell, slightly surprised, turned to answer not knowing who it was. The man confirmed that it was indeed him, and Russell, slightly wary, asked what had brought the stranger to such a question. The man in turn asked about his origins, as if he were looking for something more important in his answers. When the stranger took off his robe, Russell knew they were about to have a serious conversation. The man standing before him was in complete shock when he recognized Lloyd Kartik, a man he had apparently heard of but had not expected to see in person. The man didn't recognize Lloyd at first, but then realizing that it was Russell standing in front of him, he began to realize his mistake. He apologized for the misunderstanding, trying to justify himself, and this added ease to their conversation. After the man realized his mistake, his behavior became more restrained, and he offered to talk to Russell to get to know him better. Russell was inclined to be cautious, but decided that communicating with this man would be useful for him. The next day, Elena expressed the opinion that Cedric Russell was some kind of strange and unusual person. She could not understand his behavior, but she understood that his eccentricity could be part of his image. When Lloyd started coughing, Elena immediately asked what was wrong with him. She noticed his condition and decided that she needed to find out if he had any health problems because she was worried about his well-being. Lloyd replied that he was fine, but Elena continued to insist that he tell her if there was something serious. According to her parents, despite Russell's oddities, he was a man of great potential and quite capable of achieving his goals. The prince expressed gratitude for the information provided and noted that Elena was able to add interesting details to the general understanding of the situation. Elena, in turn, decided that it was worth learning more about the person who intrigues everyone around him so much. In the lead-up to an important plenary session that Lloyd would be attending, they had been exchanging information about high-ranking aristocrats. The information they had received from the Duke and Duchess of Rosaria was essential in preparing for the discussions. The lady noted that in addition to the main figures, those who represent the power and influence of the Crown Prince One can single out Count Cher and the Marquis of Tennessee. These aristocrats played a key role in the life of the Crown Prince and his entourage. Count Cher was an old friend of the Empress and one of the Crown Prince's most powerful aides. In turn, the Marquis of Tennessee handled all matters related to the prince, being an important figure in his political life. If Count Cher goes out and represents the prince's interests, the Marquis deals with the consequences. Vogt noted that, however, the Crown Prince was dissatisfied with the Marquis's growing power, but she didn't understand why it was like that. Still, it was obvious that given his character, the Crown Prince could not tolerate the growing power of anyone who could become a threat to him in the future. The gentleman thought it was stupid, and that this shackle only made the Marquis laugh. Elena completely agreed with him. In that case, she thinks that she should regard the Marquis as a person representing the interests of the prince. They are Count Cher. The prince wondered what the reason was. The lady told him to think for himself, to know that this is the embodiment of greed, and has an endless greed. They want to increase their wealth and power by any means possible. Aristocrats follow only the opinion of the Crown Prince because they firmly believe in the one whose hand they hold, and are not convinced that no unforeseen situations will occur. And the Crown Prince is the Emperor, and in that case their influence as close associates will increase. And no matter how much Kaizen restrains the aristocrats, they sit quietly in a symbiotic relationship. The prince noticed that his partner was smarter than he expected. As Elena thought, he is a simple man to me. The lady was surprised and asked what his opinion of her was. The prince noted that he had misspoke and hoped for forgiveness. There is a dubious character among the first prince's supporters. In fact, it is even more difficult to find non-suspicious people. But he is talking about Viscount Rond Zephyr. The lady remembered that he had recently mentioned that he had met this man, and in light of this, she was interested in how their meeting had gone. In response, he seemed to easily tell her that everything had gone well, and pretended that they had been friends for a long time. From his behavior, one would have thought that he was in fact the man's closest and most trusted confidant, for when he left the meeting, his joy was evident. He enthusiastically reported that he had not heard from him or seen him for a long time. The prince, thinking about this, came to the conclusion that his visit could be connected with participation in the plenary session. He assumed that having learned about this, he decided to show his attention and interest, believing that the gentleman lived well and had a good status. Elena was surprised by his assumption and asked him again if it was true, especially considering that he still clearly retained his affection for the first prince, which seemed completely unexpected to her. The prince himself was surprised when he heard her comment. He didn't expect her to be so sure that he was still clinging to the first prince, although many had long considered him hopeless. Elena explained that judging by what she had managed to find out a few years ago, his family was said to have quite a significant fortune and a good reputation, which allowed him to feel confident among the aristocracy. However, much has changed since then. Having found himself in a difficult financial situation, 2 of his businesses went bankrupt, and his financial situation was significantly shaken. This, of course, could not go unnoticed among influential people. It appears that he then squandered his remaining fortune on gambling, and there were rumors that he was now drowning in debt, further confirming his fall from grace and influence. Lloyd was somewhat surprised to hear how easily the lady had figured out what was going on. To him, it was a sign that her powers of observation and insight were unmatched. Therefore, many questions arose as to why this man continued to so actively support the first prince and behave with him like an old friend, although it would seem that his behavior and closeness with the prince now have no real benefit. Elena reasoned that in his current situation, it would be much wiser to enlist the support of the Crown Prince to secure some future for himself, since such an alliance could provide him with much greater benefits. Lloyd wondered if someone was paying him money to support the first prince's side. It could be related to his possible involvement in espionage, carrying out hidden assignments, and that would explain his strange behavior. It is quite possible that someone planted him as a pawn in this complex political chess tournament to undermine the first prince's position from within, causing harm and threatening his power. The lady had several theories on this matter, but she decided to refrain from drawing too bold conclusions, as this could arouse unnecessary suspicions and lead to premature and erroneous actions. Elena said that it would be extremely difficult to find out more right now. However, she suggested that if they started looking for information from the other side, they would soon be able to find the answers they needed and uncover the hidden manipulations. Lloyd wasn't entirely sure how exactly this investigation should proceed. He mused that if the Viscount was truly in financial trouble, it would be logical for him to try to borrow money. The lady agreed that such a step would be quite logical. She promised that she would try to find out if it was possible to find such data about him in order to understand who his hidden ally or source of finance could be. As Elena expected when it comes to financial matters, she is one of the few who can figure it out and bring the situation to light. The prince was grateful for her insight and experience. Then the lady decided to go to the Beatrice Trading Company, where important news awaited her. Upon arrival, she was informed that a guest had come to see her, and Randor immediately ordered to let her in because she had not seen her friend for a long time. When she entered, Elena happily noted that their meeting was always a joy, and she did not forget how important it was to always be close to people who were dear to her. Rebecca, smiling, invited her into her office. Rebecca greeted her warmly, smiling happily, and immediately expressed her gratitude for her visit. Elena apologized for coming without prior notice, but her apologies were not needed. Rebecca was happy to see her at any time. Rebecca said it didn't matter to her whether Elena had come early or not. The main thing was that she was there, and she was always happy to see her. It was a sincere expression of their strong friendship. Having prepared her guest for the conversation, Rebecca noted that although there was nothing luxurious in her office, she asked Elena to sit down and make herself at home. Elena, in turn, noted that Rebecca's office was her pride and joy, and a place that reflected her taste. The girl was very flattered by such words, and feeling gratitude, noticed that Rebecca, despite her outward modesty, really looked radiant and joyful as never before. The girl confirmed the lady's words and added that now she feels much more interest and enjoyment in her new role than when she managed the Rendor family trading company. The lady remarked that everything seemed to be going well for Rebecca. To this, Rebecca replied with a smile that everything was fine, and added that there was no need to worry because she was doing well. However, despite Rebecca's assurances, Elena sensed that something had happened that had made her come here. She said that she had come to ask a few questions and to see if Rebecca might know anything about Viscount Zafira, whose affairs interested her. Rebecca answered without hesitation that of course she knew everything about him. Regarding financial matters, Elena realized that he had left a deep impression on her since she was able to answer her questions so quickly and confidently. Rebecca explained that she only knew the financial information, and yet it was exactly what Elena wanted to know since the Viscount's financial situation was her main interest. The lady noted that she had done the right thing by coming here since Rebecca could show her documents that would help her further understand the situation. She said that about 3 years ago, he made a deal with former trading company managers, which later led to him running up debts due to gambling, entertainment, and extravagance. From then on, his financial problems only worsened. He was more and more in debt, and hardly anyone could trust him anymore. These actions caused him to lose his reputation, and the amount of debt steadily increased. Rebecca also revealed that despite his reputation, the Viscount continued to be a significant client of chain stores that were blacklisted in the area, raising questions about his true status and possible hidden connections. Elena was shocked by this information because it was astonishing to her that the Viscount was able to borrow such a huge amount over the course of 3 years. It seemed not only strange, but also very suspicious. Rebecca said that despite the huge debt, according to the rules of the retail chains, he should no longer have received loans, but they continued to provide them to him. This was explained by the fact that sometimes he came and paid off most of the debt at once. Recently, the Viscount borrowed again, but as always, he was unable to repay the funds. As a result, his debt became so great. However, even now the Viscount continues to retain some privileges. Rebecca added that the Viscount had recently visited her company, asking for a loan. But of course she had been forced to turn him down. Elena wondered if he was incapable of paying off his debt, and wondered how he managed to hide his financial problems. Deep down, Elena wondered, if he can't pay off old debts, how can he apply for a loan again? This amazed her, and she began to wonder if maybe he was paying these debts not with money, but with some things or objects. Rebecca confirmed her suspicions by showing records of how the Viscount had paid off his debts with items that were worth enough to pay off the debts. This was an additional surprise for Elena. Intrigued, Elena asked how exactly the Viscount usually repaid his loans, as she could not believe that anyone could pay with anything other than money. Rebecca explained that the Viscount mostly brought cash jewelry or gold bars, but sometimes he also paid with very expensive interior items that had significant value. Elena couldn't believe it and asked again to make sure she understood correctly. The lady explained that the Viscount had stated that these objects were family heirlooms and that he had about pieces of such interior decorations. To prove her point, Rebecca showed Elena one of these pieces of jewelry. It was so beautiful and valuable that Rebecca kept it separately as part of the family heirloom. Elena, examining the decoration cautiously, said that she had seen something like this before and asked where exactly. Rebecca was surprised and asked where exactly she could have seen it. Elena replied that she had seen such a decoration in the palace of the first prince. A few days ago, while walking with him, she had noticed a very similar flower pot, which looked almost identical to the one Rebecca had shown. She couldn't say for sure whether it matched the objects she had seen before, but for the present time, judging by her impressions, it was completely inappropriate. Elena wondered if the Viscount had probably taken advantage of the carelessness of the guards in the first prince's palace to secretly take the item. It seemed increasingly suspicious. Rebecca didn't know what to do. On the one hand, she was deceived, but on the other hand, the Viscount gave her this object that belonged to the imperial family, which could now create serious problems for Rebecca. Elena reassured her that she was not to blame for what had happened. She promised to make sure that Rebecca did not suffer because of this incident. Rebecca nodded gratefully, but was still worried about how this would affect her situation. Elena assured her that she would handle everything and asked her to trust her. Elena also suggested considering the possibility of increasing the capital of the new trading company, which could help improve the situation and reduce financial risks. Elena suggested to Rebecca that they consider increasing the capital of her new trading company. Rebecca thought about this proposal and admitted that it could be a good idea because it would be possible to develop the company more actively and strengthen its position in the market. Meanwhile, in another place, the gentleman approached Rochelle, asking if he really still refused to work for him. The prince could not understand what could make such an intelligent and strong man refuse such an offer as working for him. Rochelle calmly remarked that if the gentleman meant his refusal, then he had not changed his mind since the last time he was firmly convinced that his decisions were immutable and that working for the prince would not bring him any benefit. Rochelle apparently sensed that the prince had not given in and was still insisting. He asked the prince to stop trying to persuade him, as he was sure of his decision and was not going to change it for the sake of any offer. When the day of the noble stags meeting came, Lloyd visited Rochelle and this time made it clear that his refusal was final. The prince, however, was determined to find a way to change his mind and kept coming. The gentleman noted with some surprise that the first prince was indeed a stubborn man, having come with the same proposal. For the third time, Lloyd agreed, adding that one must have firmness and determination to survive in this cruel world. With this statement, the prince realized that Russell perceived his words as empty talk and that he considered him too frivolous. However, Lloyd did not agree with him. He knew that Russell was not really against his proposals, but was simply trying to maintain his independence. The prince said that if Russell agreed to work with him, he would be able to see much more grandiose things than he had seen before. Russell did not understand what he was talking about, since he had no desire for material goods and did not suffer from a lack of money. He asked again what exactly Lloyd meant, for he valued knowledge more than material wealth. Russell also did not know what could be interesting in working for the first prince, if this path did not lead to honor and power. The prince reminded him that if Russell accepted his offer, he could get something much more valuable: power, opportunities, and the achievement of even higher goals. Russell believed that this was just ambition, hidden behind the prince's words. The gentleman did not continue this conversation and asked what he could do to make Lloyd give up his attempts to recruit him. He was sure that after such words, the prince would feel insulted and retreat. But the prince turned to Russell and asked if he was sure of his decision. He emphasized that despite his refusal, Russell had exceptional abilities and that he could achieve much more if he worked for him. The prince knew very well that people like Russell not only had great abilities, but also excellent self-control. Lloyd was sure that if Russell listened to his offer, he would be able to get everything he dreamed of, and even more. Lloyd offered him a more ambitious entertainment. Russell was stunned and did not understand what the master meant. The prince explained that he wanted Russell to help him install a new ruler on the throne, using his knowledge and abilities. The first prince confidently stated that he was genuinely interested in whether Russell, with his skills, could help raise someone worthy to the throne, and that it could be quite an exciting challenge. After a short conversation, Lloyd said that Russell would have to accept his offer, otherwise he might lose the chance to achieve his goals. The prince was sure that if Russell did not agree, he would simply leave and regret his decision. On the way back to the carriage, Lloyd unexpectedly met the Viscount. The Viscount was surprised to see him. This was extremely unusual, since he and Lloyd had not met for quite some time. While the prince was talking to his master, his subordinates quickly and quietly stunned the Viscount, not giving him a chance to resist. Everything happened so quickly that the Viscount did not even understand what had happened. The Marquis of Tennessee, seeing that the situation had gone wrong, gave the order to eliminate the Viscount. But Lloyd was sure that now was the right moment to use the situation and change everything to his advantage. If the plan succeeded, this moment could be decisive in the Viscount's life. Everything was in Lloyd's hands, and he was ready to use the chance to change his destiny and strengthen his power. Now that the successor to the throne was uncertain, he could use the moment to put Lloyd on the throne and become the new emperor's closest confidant, which would open up unlimited opportunities for him. By becoming a close ally of the emperor, he could become the greatest aristocrat of the empire, controlling everything and receiving unconditional respect. Although it might look like the prince was kidnapped, he knew that by explaining the situation correctly, he would convince everyone that the most important thing was to make sure that the Marquis of Tennessee believed the first prince to be dead. The maid bowed to the master as he entered. He asked her to extend her hand to him. She extended it silently, feeling the tension in the air, foreshadowing something important. He cut her hand without showing any remorse. Blood flowed out, and he immediately used it to cover the first prince's watch. He carefully smeared the blood on the metal, creating a gruesome picture. The master thought, how much blood would it take to convince everyone of the death of the first prince? He wondered how effective his actions would be, and whether this gesture would be enough. He told the maid not to show concern, but to concentrate on the task at hand. The room was to be furnished with expensive furniture, and his wife and daughter were to stay away from the basement where the hidden events were taking place. The maid was angry. This man had not paid her wages for several months. She decided that as soon as she received at least some of it, she would immediately leave his house. Her arm hurt, and she couldn't understand why he needed to smear someone else's blood on the gold medal. It was strange and absurd. She couldn't figure out his motives, but everything seemed sinister. She thought about it. Having worked in the house for 3 years, she had never seen anything like this. This watch and the blood were something completely new and incomprehensible. She couldn't understand what was happening. The basement was now under surveillance, but usually no one went there. However, the maid felt that there was something important hidden in this place, and her curiosity made her wonder about the possible value of what was there. She decided to bring food for the guards to distract them. She said that it was on the master's orders, and they happily accepted the treat, not expecting such a gesture from him. The maid left, saying that she had some business to attend to. The guards were glad that they had managed to get something more than just ordinary food, and were pleasantly surprised by such attention from their master. While they were enjoying the food and alcohol, the maid hurried to complete her task. She felt that something valuable was hidden here, but what exactly she could not yet understand. The guards were discussing how much their master, who was usually stingy, had surprised them. They had not expected him to provide them with food and drink so generously it seemed unusual. The maid thought that there was definitely something important here. She couldn't shake the feeling that the hidden objects could be connected to money or valuables that could change her fate. She was determined to find out what was hidden in that house. Maybe there was jewelry or money that she could find out about. If she was lucky, this was her chance for freedom. But when she opened the basement door, her gaze fell upon a man lying in blood. At first, she thought he was a corpse, but then she noticed that he was still breathing. It became clear that the Viscount had kidnapped him. The realization came instantly. She needed to leave this house immediately. She was stunned and scared. Her thought was clear. She needed to leave as quickly as possible so as not to become the next victim of this terrible man. She noticed the buttons on the man's clothes. They looked very expensive, and the thought occurred to her, if she stole just one, the Viscount might not notice. It was a risk, but she couldn't resist. Bella was exhausted beyond measure. She looked at her watch. It was already past 9 o'clock, and if the Lady of Rosaria found out that she was late, it could lead to serious consequences. All this was alarming. Bella looked at the maid and asked her not to tell anyone about her delay. She felt her heart beating faster with excitement. She still couldn't get over everything that had happened. Elena, tired from work, calmly replied that she had already warned Bella that the working day ended at exactly 7. The lady was in her office, and she could not continue working after that time. The maid, seeing her mistress's tiredness, suggested finishing the work and returning home. The mistress, of course, did not object. She needed to rest, as the day had been filled with many difficult tasks. Suddenly, they heard a rustling sound. The lady suggested that it might be a client and offered to meet him. Bella looked around warily, feeling that something was wrong, but decided to follow the instructions. When they opened the door, there was a woman standing in front of them, greeting the lady. She said that she came to the organization to buy and sell information. Her voice was calm, but her eyes were full of worry. The woman explained that she had come here after hearing some rumors that she thought might be useful. The maid was wary and watched her words closely, trying to figure out what she was hiding. There was blood on the woman's hand and fear on her face. Apparently, she had encountered something terrible. It could have been related to what was happening in the house, and the maid knew that the situation was serious. The maid, feeling that she could get money for her information, asked if she could get paid. The woman nodded, promising that it would be a good deal. Everything indicated that her information was worth it. The woman first considered selling the button at a pawn shop and running away, but she soon realized that was not an option. Wherever she went, the Viscount was always nearby, and she needed to find a safe solution. In the end, she saw no other way but to leave this house. Her thoughts were occupied by the streets, where she tried to find a way out, but everything pointed to the fact that she needed to escape to another place. The thought flashed through the woman's mind that she could sell the information to this organization. That way, she could start a new life, get rid of the danger that had crept so close to her home. Bella was relieved to know that her identity would be hidden and her privacy would be preserved. She felt relieved. It was a chance for her, but there were still many questions. The woman observing Bella's reaction offered to pay her 5 gold pieces at once. This surprised the lady. She had never met clients who were willing to pay so generously without prior negotiations. Bella couldn't understand why the maid was so insistent on asking for this amount. She thought that such a request would be excessive, but there was something in her eyes that made her doubt her usual caution. The lady finally explained that she would set a price for the information only after she heard what was being discussed. If the information was important, she would offer the woman a sum she would not be disappointed with. The woman slowly showed her the button, hoping that it would explain everything. The lady looked at it, but did not immediately understand what exactly she was supposed to understand. It was a button, but she did not see any special value in it. The woman explained that the button belonged to a man the Viscount had kept in the basement. He had been kidnapped and was now being held captive. The lady finally understood what was being talked about, and her face changed. The maid assumed that the man was an aristocrat. His clothes indicated that his status was high. She thought that he could still be saved if she could act quickly before the Viscount decided to kill him. The lady, hearing that it was a button from an aristocrat's clothing, wondered if the maid knew whose button it was. She felt that the information was beginning to take on a significance that she could not ignore. The woman nervously replied that she simply thought the button was expensive. The lady asked her to wait, as she needed time to assess the significance of the item before making a decision. A few minutes later, the mistress, assessing the information received, thanked the maid. She promised to reward her for the importance of the information and offered a suitable amount in gratitude. The woman did not understand what exactly she meant by these words. Her heart was beating fast. She felt that her life would never be the same, that this meeting would change something. The mistress told her that she needed to go as far away as possible. She suggested leaving the empire because that was the only way the maid could save herself. Everything that was happening was jeopardizing her safety. Bella was shocked when she learned that the button belonged to the first prince. It was something out of the ordinary. She couldn't understand how it was all connected and what would happen next. She said that she now had a plan. She had to go to the Duchy of Rosaria. It was a place where her future could change, and she could not afford to delay. The training hall in the Rosaria Duchy was a place where she could prove herself. Here she could learn a lot and become stronger by competing with the best. She felt like this was her chance. The knights admired the lady and hoped that she would be able to defeat the leader. They dreamed of her becoming a leader and saw greatness in her, but she was modest in her ambitions and did not want this. Some knights hoped that she would lead their squad, but the woman herself was not ready for this. She understood that this was not her path. However, the leader of the knights noticed that his squad preferred her. The boss offered a bet. If he won, she would have to train with him once a week. It was a challenge, but she couldn't refuse. Her determination grew stronger, and she accepted the challenge. Elena glanced at the leader and grinned. She realized he was just trying to provoke her, but she wasn't going to give in. If he wanted a contest, she was ready. But she still didn't know what would happen if she didn't find a reason to argue. The leader responded to her words with a grin, saying that she was simply afraid of losing. He was confident in his victory, and this only provoked Elena. Elena, feeling how his words were making her more and more angry, decided not to remain silent and replied, "If you insist, then I will agree." Her eyes lit up with determination, and she was ready for any outcome. At that moment, everything suddenly stopped. Milady called for a maid, and from her tone, it was clear that something urgent had happened. The mistress looked worried, not understanding what exactly had happened to call her so urgently. Lena entered the hall and bowed her head, apologizing to the mistress for interrupting the training. She spoke with an expression as if something extremely important had happened. Her eyes were full of excitement. Elena, still not understanding who could come at such a late hour, raised her eyebrows. Who could come to them with such news when the whole team was focused on training? And then Bella appeared before them. She looked tense, and there was worry on her face. She bowed and apologized, saying that it was urgent and she needed to speak to the lady. Bella silently took out of her pocket an object that made Elena wary. It was the same button she had seen earlier. Bella explained that it was not just a decoration, but an important clue to what was happening in the Viscount's house. Elena noticed a button from Lloyd's uniform. She looked at it for a long time, not understanding how it could have ended up in her hands. Her thoughts were confused, and the girl felt that this find was hiding something important and dangerous. Bella, seeing her confusion, hastened to reassure her. She said that there was no reason to be afraid, but she thought that His Highness the First Prince might have been the victim of a kidnapping. The situation was serious. Hearing this, Elena asked in horror, who could dare to do such a thing? Bella immediately assumed that Viscount Zephyr could be behind this. Her words sounded confident, as if she already had reasons for this. Elena thought about this. If this was really the Viscount, then he could be the spy she had heard so much about. This thought began to make her anxious and angry. She immediately called Sir Diol, asking him to accompany her. Elena suggested that they take a walk together, replacing the sparring that was planned for the evening. She spoke confidently, as if she knew where their path was leading. The gentleman was surprised that the lady wanted to take a walk at such a late hour. His gaze betrayed slight confusion, but he quickly agreed, realizing that there might be a more important meaning hidden in Elena's words. Elena said that she needed to go for a walk right now because she suspected that someone had stolen her important thing. Her voice sounded firm, as if there was more to it than she could say outright. Elena noticed that the commander of the Viscount's troops was trying to set them up too actively. Her thoughts were torn between fear and determination to find out the truth about what was happening. Diol noted that since something had been stolen from their lady, they were obliged to teach the guilty a proper lesson. His words sounded confident, and this gave Elena confidence, although inside she was worried. Elena was a little shocked because she just used it as an excuse, and he believed it. Now everything looked more serious than she planned, but it was too late to stop. After this, Diol asked where exactly she was going. At such a late hour, Elena answered reservedly that she suspected Viscount Zephyr of stealing her thing and believed that they should find him now. Hearing this, the man became very angry. His face turned red with anger, and he firmly stated that this crazy bastard could not get away with such actions. Diol noted that their men had already dealt with the Viscount's mercenaries, and now there was no threat from them. Elena felt relieved, but she knew that this was only the beginning. Apparently, the Viscount will not send new mercenaries. However, Diol reminded them that they cannot simply return the stolen goods and leave. That would be too simple and ineffective a solution. Elena smiled when she heard his words. She agreed, adding that if they annoyed the Viscount, he would return the debt with interest. They should act smarter and leave him without a single chance. They already have enough evidence to put the squeeze on the Viscount: gambling, theft, embezzlement of the imperial family's belongings. All this is enough to arrest him. But he did not stop there and committed an even more serious crime. Lloyd's kidnapping was a serious charge. The Viscount was holding a member of the imperial family captive. This was clear evidence of his guilt, and now Elena had a chance to uncover the entire plot. Therefore, Elena suggested going to the basement, where in her opinion there could be traces confirming their guesses. She assumed that the Viscount was not acting on his own, but under someone's direction. Lloyd was in danger, but the circumstances were fortunate. With the help of this situation, they could find out who was behind the Viscount and thwart the conspirators' plans while there was still time. Suddenly, Elena stopped thinking about her strange luck. She remembered Lloyd saying he would go to Rushall alone, and it had seemed like a crazy idea. Why had he refused to be accompanied? The prince explained that he wanted to avoid rumors. If he took a detachment with him, everyone would think that he was trying to increase his influence. He needed to act discreetly so as not to attract unnecessary attention. Elena disagreed with him. She insisted that he at least take a knife. It was reckless to do this unarmed. and she tried to convince him to be careful. Although he laughed at her words, Lloyd was surprised when Elena pulled a knife from under her skirt. He didn't understand why she did it, but her determination and practicality made him look at her differently. Elena said that if things didn't go according to plan, he would have to brandish the dagger to create an opening for escape. Her voice was stern, as if she were giving battle orders. Lloyd jokingly remarked that she looked cool, even giving such commands, but Elena demanded that he stop his stupid jokes and just take the gun. Elena thought he was an idiot. His reckless actions only made things worse. Instead of being careful, he kept running into trouble, as if he was looking for trouble. At that moment, the door suddenly opened. Lloyd fell silent, and Diol quickly called Elena. They both tensed, expecting a threat. Who could it be at such a time? They immediately assumed that one of the Viscount's mercenaries was still nearby. Diol ordered Elena to stay behind while he found out who had entered. The atmosphere grew tense. Every sound made the heart beat faster. A stranger stepped out of the shadows, who at first seemed like an enemy, but as he stepped closer, they recognized him. It was Lloyd, the first prince. He looked a little shabby, but his confident smile was reassuring. Lloyd laughed and asked if they had come to save him. He was glad to see them, but his voice sounded like he had no idea what they had been through. Elena felt both angry and relieved. Elena rushed to him, asking questions. Was he hurt? How did he even get into this situation? Lloyd just laughed, noticing how much she was worried about him. This angered her even more. Elena couldn't help but swing her arm to hit him for his stupid carelessness, but Lloyd dodged it, which made her even more angry. She didn't understand why he was doing this. Lloyd explained that he didn't want to get beat up, even if she was worried about him. He laughed, but there was a hint of relief in his words that they had come. Elena screamed, accusing him of letting himself be kidnapped on purpose. Her voice shook with anger because it could have ended much worse. She couldn't believe he'd taken such a risk. Lloyd smiled, noticing that she was smart and had figured out his plan. However, he advised her to listen to her partner first. It wasn't as simple as she thought. Diol, listening to the conversation, noted that if this was true, then the thing stolen from Elena was Lloyd himself. Sir looked stunned. He could not believe that the prince had conceived such a plan. It was all becoming clearer. Diol thought that perhaps the two had decided to act on their own, without letting the others know of their plans. That would explain their strange behavior and Lloyd's sudden disappearance. Elena listened and became more and more irritated. She didn't like that everything was kept secret, and she was forced to sort things out after the fact. Her patience was running out, but she tried not to lose control. Lloyd mentioned that he had taken precautions just in case. Among them was a device resembling an alarm clock that would go off at a set time. This would help avoid surprises. Elena, having listened, only shook her head. She did not know about such devices and doubted their effectiveness. It seemed to her that it was more like a game than a serious plan. After the explanation, Lloyd proposed the next step: wait for the main culprit to catch him red-handed. This was a chance not only to save the situation, but also to expose the entire network of conspirators. Diol, hearing this, said that the devil is often mentioned, and he always appears. Soon voices were heard in the distance. This could mean only one thing: the culprit is approaching. They noticed a woman who looked worried. She looked at the unconscious mercenaries and asked if her father knew about this. Her voice was full of confusion. The woman came closer and, seeing three strangers, asked who they were. Her gaze was wary, but there was fear in her voice. She clearly did not expect to meet strangers here. Lloyd was the first to introduce himself. He said that he was the first prince, Lloyd Kartika. The woman was shocked. She could not understand why His Highness would visit their house. Her mother, coming up behind her, noticed the blood on the prince's head. She asked a question, not understanding what had happened or why. The sight of her son filled her with anxiety and horror. Lloyd calmly explained that an unprecedented crime had occurred in the imperial palace. A theft. He and Elena had been conducting an investigation that had led them to the residence of Viscount Zephyr. The woman finally understood what was being said. She looked stunned, as if she was just now realizing the magnitude of what had happened. Her eyes betrayed that she knew something. She remembered the blood on the prince's head and decided that her father might have been involved. Her face expressed a mixture of horror and guilt, but she said nothing. Lloyd added that if the women saw the stolen item, they should give evidence. This would help to remove responsibility from them. Their fear was obvious, but they remained silent. The women were even more frightened. They could not believe that they were now involved in a matter that threatened their family with great trouble. Viscount Zephyr was furious when he learned of the prince's visit. He had carried out his patron's orders, but instead of praise, he had been met with humiliation. Anger was seething within him, although he tried to maintain the appearance of calm. Zephyr couldn't believe that the prince was allowing himself to treat him like that. He felt cheated and used. However, inside he enjoyed the fact that the prince had fallen for his trick. The Viscount thought he had every chance of turning the situation to his advantage. He enjoyed the thought of wiping Lloyd's confident smile off his face. Now, if he can convince the first prince that he is right, everything will change. He just needs to find the right words and time to influence Lloyd. While he was thinking, it seemed to him that the maid had prepared his quarters perfectly. However, when he entered the living room, he felt that something was wrong. There was tension in the air. The Viscount looked into the room and froze. In front of him stood Lloyd Kartika, His Highness. Next to him was Elena Rosaria, and their presence in this place was a real shock. Zephyr felt his heart sink. He had not expected to see the prince here. This was the most unexpected and unpleasant visit in his life. He had to quickly change tactics. The Viscount didn't understand why these two were together. He doesn't know anything, but first, he wants to push this woman aside and somehow win over the Lloyd. He immediately fell to his knees and was very glad that he woke up high. He said it was happiness and asked if he remembered anything. The Viscount was so happy to meet him in the alley that suddenly the robber appeared and attacked him. But no need to worry, he defeated this scoundrel and took care of His Highness Elena. Noticed that this slippery year was trying to turn the situation to its advantage. In fact, the Viscount was pushed into the sack by a standing man, and he was going to kill Lloyd. However, most likely seeing Lloyd unconscious, other feelings awakened in him. This man wanted to exploit this situation and gain even more power. Lloyd pretended he didn't know that this was exactly how it was, and the Viscount happily confirmed it. How much he had mocked the previous Lloyd, that he had even thought of something like this. Elena noticed that this was fundamentally different from what she had heard. The Viscount was horrified and asked what she was talking about. He did not quite understand what she meant. Elena asked the commander to bring him. Dial brought in a man who was kneeling and trembling with fear. Elena said that this is the man she caught, and it looks like he is lying, saying something completely different. Viscount Zephyr arranged for the kidnapping of the first prince. The man began to ask the lady what she was saying and why he would kidnap the first prince. He feared that his loyalty to His Highness had been misinterpreted, so he asked her to stop this nonsense immediately. Elena noticed that as the guy could see, the Viscount was speaking differently, so she asked him what he thought about it. The guy noted that he could show something and that he had a check in his chest that the Viscount had given him after hiring him. This could be evidence. Elena understood him and ordered him to do her service so that he would find the check and give it to the prince. Lloyd, the sly one, had prepared well, and she had no idea he would use a hired double spy in such a way. The prince opened the check and sighed because it was signed by the Viscount. The man didn't even know what to do. Lloyd told him that it hurt his heart very much and that he probably lacked a lot in his eyes. The Viscount said that it was a misunderstanding and he could explain everything. Elena turned to him and asked if this was also a coincidence and a misunderstanding. She had in her hands a vase stolen by the Viscount, and he asked in horror where she got it from. The prince said that he asked Meledia to find a rat that had taken up residence in his palace and was stealing things, and that was how he came to this path after she caught the thief by the tail. The Viscount tried to justify himself somehow, but the prince said that this rat was also going to kill him by arranging the kidnapping. The man told His Highness that he could explain everything, he was only asking permission to speak. He hadn't noticed before that Lloyd always had such blue and menacing eyes. The gentleman said there was no need for that, and his wife and daughter had already seen the truth. All his words will have no meaning. The Viscount realized that it was all over. They had abandoned him to his death in order to survive themselves. Now he is a corpse. However, the prince noted that he was thinking of giving him his longtime loyal subject one last chance. The Viscount looked up and asked if he was serious, and immediately began to thank him and shower him with promises. The prince ordered him to tell him who was pulling the strings and controlling him. The Viscount began to ask what he was talking about, and he himself was in complete shock. He didn't understand how much he knew. The prince understood and said that it meant that he had kidnapped him of his own free will. The Viscount said that this was not so, and that he was only acting as he was ordered, the kidnapping, the attempt on the life of His Highness. This is the crime of the Marquis of Tennessee. The Viscount decided that if he was going to die, he would take this Marquis with him. He said that he had confessed everything, so I suppose the prince would spare him. Lloyd said, of course he would, if he could provide evidence that this Marquis had pushed him into it. The prince would not only guarantee his safety, but he would also give him this. It was a precious stone. The Viscount looked at this and was very happy, because he hadn't seen such people for a long time. He would be able to start a new life in another country. Therefore, he promised to provide him with documents confirming his relationship with the Marquis. When he basically reviewed everything, he noticed that this was enough, and he gave the stone to him. The man was very grateful to His Highness and began to bow to him. Suddenly, someone burst in and apologized for the intrusion. She was from the Beatrice Trading Company. She noticed that she recognized the Viscount and said that she had come to collect a debt. The Viscount did not understand what was going on and what the debt was. The woman snatched the gem from his hands, so he was very confused. She noted that it was a magnificent gem, but it would only cover about 1/4 of the amount he had borrowed. He began to tell Vic that he had never borrowed money from Beatrice's trading company, and that was why he was asking her to give him his stone. The man immediately grabbed him. Vic, he shouted that he would file a complaint against them as fraudsters. Rebecca said that he already owed a large sum of money to other trading companies, and they bought these bonds. She gave him proof, and the sum was quite large. The Viscount thought it was impossible. Rebecca said that she would ask him to pay his debt diligently in future. Elena thought about what it must be, and time was short, but she exceeded her expectations. Earlier, she asked the lady if she wanted to increase the company's funds. At the same time, Elena wanted to do exactly that. They can of course now buy back the Viscount's bonds at a low price, but there is a high risk that they will not be able to repay the borrowed funds. Elena noted that she would certainly be able to return everything, and she would be able to ensure this. Then Rebecca decided to trust the lady and set the stage. She just needed to name the date and time. After this, the lady and the prince left, and the Viscount thought that if things continued like this, he would not be able to escape and would die at the hands of the Marquis. He didn't understand at all why everything turned against him. He was sure that everything was going smoothly, but for some reason it suddenly happened. He didn't understand at all what time they were walking together. Elena said that the prince should show at least a little respect to his partner. The Viscount decided that it was she who was to blame for everything, and that it was because of her that he failed. So he grabbed the sword and shouted for her to die. He called her a villain and swung his sword at her and was already almost at the line. The lady was very scared, but at that moment the first prince jumped out and covered her with a knife, the same one that she gave him. The prince threw the Viscount's sword away, and he couldn't believe it. He didn't want to end up like this. Dial did not understand how this brute dared to do this, and the Viscount asked if he would not raise his sword, because for a knight to raise a sword against aristocrats is very low. Elena told Sir that the Viscount was right. He was an aristocrat, and that could cause problems. Elena told him not to worry, because that didn't mean she would be lenient with him. Elena added that once the knight left the room, they would be able to continue their negotiations. The day of the plenary session, the atmosphere in the hall is a little tense. This was said by Count Wappen, who is a supporter of the Crown Prince, and Count Harris, who is also a supporter of the Crown Prince. Today is the first day that the first prince is present at the plenary session, so it is quite natural, and yet the aristocrats of the first prince faction are somehow too fussy. They say that Viscount Zephyr hasn't arrived yet. No one has seen His Highness all this time. The first prince has only shown her pitiful side, so naturally they are worried. The Marquis said not to worry because the meeting would proceed as usual, and the Count asked the Marquis what this meant. The man did not answer, and remarked that it seemed that someone had arrived. Enter Duke Rosaria, Rick Rosaria, head of the Emperor's faction that supports neutrality. Many have heard that he recently appointed his daughter as his successor, so they congratulate him. The gentleman noted that this was so, and they had not seen each other for a long time. Therefore, it was more pleasant for him to receive congratulations from the Marquis and others once again. The Marquis was also happy about such great news. The man sat with a grin. This is a scoundrel very soon. He will make her bite her elbows. How furious she will be if the bride of the Crown Prince and his daughter becomes his. He wondered if she would be able to maintain her noble manners, even in such a situation. By the way, for some reason Viscount Zephyr is not visible. Perhaps he hid with his tail between his legs. The man ordered everyone to stand up, because His Majesty, the Emperor, and His Highness the Heir, apparent the Prince, were entering the hall. Everyone started whispering that the first prince had not come, since many had not seen him today. For many, this was not surprising because they already thought that he would not come. The Emperor ordered them to remain silent, and the Crown Prince was to begin the opening of the meeting. The gentleman realized that the first prince was gone, and could not believe that the opportunities he had shown him would end right now. The Crown Prince turned to His Highness and said that he now declares this plenary session open. The Empire is their life. Suddenly, the guards began to whisper, because you, Your Highness, the first principal had come. But the trail press said that they had a meeting, so she asked them what the noise was. The servant asked to understand him, because they said that he had arrived, His Highness the First Prince. The Marquis was stunned and couldn't believe it, and Lloyd apologized for being late. It was his first time here. The Emperor said that there was nothing to worry about, because this also happens, so he asked him to sit down quickly. The middle prince was very angry, because the Marquis told him that he had dealt with the Lloyd. The first principal looked at his brother and smiled at him, which made the heir even more angry. He thought that this worldly worm even dared to look at him like that and smile. The Crown Prince asked for silence and said that he would start all over again. He was speaking again, but the first principal interrupted him and asked them to stop because before the meeting began, he would like to discuss one important issue. The Crown Prince was simply furious because now he was also interrupting him. So he said that after all the participants had expressed their opinions, they would continue. Well, now his father interrupted him and said that the first prince should speak. Lloyd was grateful to His Highness. The point is that some time ago, he survived an assassination attempt and reprisal from an aristocrat who stole things belonging to the imperial family. The Emperor was very angry and did not understand who dared to make an attempt on the life of another member of the imperial family. The first prince ordered the doors to be opened, and then everyone was in complete shock because Elena Rosaria was behind the door. Everyone started talking and whispering and could not believe that Lady Elena could have made an attempt on the life of the first prince, and thought that this was going beyond all bounds. They knew, of course, that she was a real villain, but they couldn't believe it. The Duke, her father, anxiously asked her if she was really involved in this matter. Elena said that she understood what they were all probably thinking, but it wasn't her. The lady ordered him to be brought, and the guards immediately said that it would be done. When the criminal was brought into the room, the Marquise could not understand why this scoundrel had grabbed him. Rond Zephyr, now before them, is the man who attempted to assassinate His Highness the First Prince. The aristocrats couldn't believe it, and it was simply unthinkable. Lloyd, First Prince of Kartik. Before we begin this session, I would like to inform my father of an urgent matter. His father told him to continue. Besides the punishment of Vikantosa, the attempt on the life of a member of the imperial family, and the theft of imperial property, there is a man behind it. Earlier, Elena said that she felt that they needed to negotiate again. The man asked what he should do. She said they would bring him to the plenary session which would take place in a few days. Then he will reveal the identity of the person behind him, thereby fulfilling their request. After this, Elena will at least keep him alive. They slowly approached during the interrogation of the Viscount, so the Emperor asked everyone to calm down. The Marquise did not understand at all. The prince asked what he meant. The gentleman turned to His Highness and said that he had almost been killed during a kidnapping, and nothing was known about the imperial family, unless he was deliberately hiding it. And the fact is that it defies common sense. Everyone started saying that if you think about it, he was right, and the knights of the imperial family could not have been unaware of what was happening. It was truly unthinkable and quite strange. This made Elena angry. This Marquis is acting like a snake because he changed the general atmosphere with a few words. The first prince turned to the Marquise and asked what he wanted to say now. The Marquis said that the thought came to him that this was all some kind of performance. Elena asked the Marquis again if he really claimed that the first prince was lying. The man said he simply doubted the veracity of what happened. Elena asked why His Highness would lie to the first prince. The Marquis said that these were simply the thoughts of a humble servant, and he thought that the first prince was trying to expand his influence by making a strong impression at his first meeting. Or he wanted to use his close supporters to create a non-existent puppeteer and get rid of the foreign power that was bothering him. The Viscount couldn't believe that he was saving himself. Elena thought that no matter how weak Prince Lloyd was, he couldn't stop saying things like that to him. Therefore, Elena said that this was all an unfounded assumption. The Marquise thought that the ambition of two people who were not used to doing government work had outpaced their abilities. Perhaps they should just treat this situation as a minor incident and pretend nothing happened. He promised to forget this incident and asked the gentlemen if they could follow his example. The Emperor was already wondering what Lloyd would do. The prince said that he had listened to him carefully. Of course, he had the right to such an opinion, but he was not lying. It would be nice to put this dubious issue to the vote. The Marquis did not understand what kind of vote was being discussed, and I do not understand what kind of sudden trick this was. The Marquis turned to His Highness and said that such things could not be resolved by such methods. Elena asked if she could speak out. There is a law that states that if a question arises that causes the opinion of the gentleman to be divided, a vote can be taken. The Marquis told the lady to calm her insistence, but the lady said that if he did not believe he could call the judge and see for himself, she did not care. Elena made this statement after visiting the library of the Imperial Palace a few days ago and looking through books on imperial law legislation of the Empire Article 687, paragraph 39. If for some reason opinion is divided due to doubts about the authenticity of the agenda or other nuances, a vote can be held with the permission of the imperial family. Apparently, even those who are accustomed to state affairs have a poor knowledge of the laws. The Marquis agreed that they should hold a vote on the law. He thought that it was impossible for many to be in favor anyway. They then decided to take a vote, and Lloyd said that the topic would be put on the agenda of the meeting if more than 1 or 3 of the members of the meeting agreed. The prince asked those who agreed to raise their hands. The Duke of Rosaria said that he gave his consent. Elena was very grateful to her father and decided that she would definitely repay, of course, her mother. After the Duke, everyone immediately began to raise their hands and say that they agreed. Everything is already as I expected. Not enough at this rate. The Marquis will win. Rushel said that he also gave his consent after listening to His Highness, and he thought about it and came to the conclusion that it seemed that he had witnessed what happened then. That day, he was heading to the library to prepare for the Red Deer meeting. Well, in one of the alleys, I saw Viscount Zephyr getting into a carriage supporting the first prince. Since he is a close supporter of the first prince, he gave me special importance to this at that time. But now he realized that it was a kidnapping. After these words, Elena was very happy. Only she and the catch adhered to one position. But the witness and the testimony of a third person will add credibility to their assertion. This concludes the voting and announces the topic of today's meeting. The first prince suggested that the Marquise's objection be regarded as loyalty for what he thought of the imperial family's authority. The emperor confirmed that the Marquise's opinion regarding the agenda of the meeting was overruled, so he could continue. The prince gave Viscount Zephyr the opportunity to reveal the identity of the man behind him. He had to reveal his identity at the plenary session. If he did not testify, then his family would be exterminated. Therefore, already at the meeting, the prince ordered him to say what kind of person he was. Earlier, the prince said that if he answered, he would spare his life. The Viscount said, in a trembling voice, that the man who ordered him to harm the first prince, but he didn't have time to finish speaking because one of the guards killed him. Everyone didn't understand what was going on and why the guards were behaving like that. It was simply outrageous. It was necessary to catch this scoundrel, but the prince shouted for silence in the hall. He said that, as if it didn't happen, he tried to kill you on the imperial family, and there is no need to leave him alive. The meeting cannot be continued and is declared closed. The murder of the only witness would seem to have resolved the situation, but Kaizen's actions are enough to sow suspicion in the hearts of everyone present. The Marquis's name was clearly heard, the Crown Prince, who silenced the Viscount. Although he couldn't tell the whole story, many heard it. The Crown Prince may be involved in the assassination attempt on the first prince. For the moment, Elena was happy with this, but she met the eyes of the emperor. He had been watching her all this time, so she was very surprised by this. Kaizen was furious and asked who told him that he would help him, even obeying the orders of His Majesty the Emperor. A beautiful marriageable girl and a worthless bastard mocked him. The prince noticed that he was right and came closer to the Marquis. The man was ashamed. Kaizen told you to stop here and order him to properly investigate who is in Lloyd's faction. And also, he must find out information about Elena Rosaria. It's Elena Rosaria who really bothers him, so he needs to find out what kind of relationship she has with Lloyd. 2 days passed after the plenary session, and due to the incident at the meeting, Lloyd was busy receiving inquiries from numerous aristocrats. And of course, she had a good harvest too. Rebecca said it was amazing. And in fact, the Viscount was so heavily in debt that even if they took over the mansion from him, it would only cover a minimal amount. However, it turns out that he managed to accumulate so many things without paying off his debts. As Elena said, the budget of their trading companies increased significantly. The girl said that she had something useful for the lady. Elena was surprised and asked again. Rebecca discovered a treaty made between the Marquis of Tennessee and Viscount Zephyr. Elena was surprised and noticed that everything was described here in even more detail than in their evidence. It seemed that this bastard had been acting behind their backs. Elena noted that this was to be expected from Lady Rendor, so she was very grateful to her. After the meeting was over, the Marquis must have rushed to the Viscount's estate in order to cover up the traces of his connection with Zephyr, but found nothing, and she believes that he was shaking when he saw it. Someone came and took the contract first. They left some message saying that they know a lot more than he thinks, and they have proof. They were very close to success, and at that moment, she could not even imagine that the storm would soon break out. The Duke of Rosary thought about why Elena did this for the sake of the first prince. He hoped it wasn't what he thought it was, and she did it because the first prince was in danger. Wanted Elena's character had definitely changed a lot. The dial came to the master, and he was surprised because he didn't even know why he came at such an hour. He said that he had something to tell him about Elena. After his story, the father was stunned. The next morning, Elena greeted her mother and father. They were also very happy to see their daughter. It was already the middle of summer. It was getting hot. Elena was thirsty. The father turned to his daughter and said that he would like to ask her something. He thought that Elena wanted to break off her engagement with the heir to the throne and re-engage with the first prince. Elena almost choked on her juice, so she started coughing. Mother was worried and asked Elena if she was okay. The girl said that everything was fine. The lady did not understand why father said this. It was so absurd. Until this moment she was in a wonderful mood. And now he has ruined it. He found her actions over the last few days suspicious and strange, as well as what happened during the plenary session. While he was thinking about everything yesterday, Diol came to him and told him something. Mother asked what the man had already said. Elena gave her dagger to the first prince. And during the kidnapping incident, the relationship between them seemed unusual. Elena screamed that this was not so, and all he heard was a huge misunderstanding. The girl was upset because she asked the sir not to tell this, but he was still her father's vassal. She decided that she would get to him. Elizabeth noted that, by the way, there was even a case when Your Highness personally came to meet. Father asked in horror if it was true. Elena was very upset because Mother was adding fuel to the fire herself. If she categorically denies it, she will look even stranger. First of all, she needs to calm down. Elena said that she knows he is worried about his recent actions, but she is different now and will not disappoint them anymore. So she asks him to trust her. Of course, they will be on their Elena's side because she has really changed. The girl was very grateful to her mother and father, so she smiled broadly. One difficult stage had been passed. Because of her karma, this kind of thing has to happen to her every day. Mother asked, how about going to a place with her after lunch? Elena apologized and said that she already had an appointment. Elizabeth noted that it was a pity and also asked who she had made the appointment with. Elena said that with the first prince, and initially they were supposed to meet the day before, yesterday, but it didn't work out. Mother was surprised when she heard about the first prince again, and father also began to look at her strangely. Elena noted that everything could be misunderstood, but honestly this was not what they thought, and they decided to hold a meeting related to the incident that arose during the plenary session. Already in the imperial palace, Elena was very irritated. She had not managed to resolve the misunderstanding, and because she had come here, her soul was 100 times more restless. She noticed that it was very beautiful there. This is the only plus of this place. She looks, and it seems to her that all the irritation disappears. Suddenly she heard Kaizen's voice, so her mood worsened again. The guy asked her what she was doing there. Elena sighed because I wanted to meet him, and I thought that he could just ignore me and pass by. The lady had to greet His Highness the Crown Prince, so she did so immediately. The lady informed him that she had urgent business, so she asked to be allowed to take her leave. Kaizen grabbed her hand and asked her to stop. He thought that she should stop already. Even leniency has its limits. Elena said that she doesn't understand at all what he's talking about. It's completely unclear what this idiot is talking about. Kaizen started yelling that her methods were terribly childish and trivial. He understands that the reason is her love for him, but there is a limit to everything, so she must stop this. And he also hopes that she will no longer provoke him and show herself in front of him with that bastard. Elena couldn't believe that he was saying this, so she decided to ask him, just in case, if he thought she was hitting on the first prince to get his attention. Kaizen believed that everything was exactly like this, and said that if this was not a provocation, then he did not understand why she was carrying on with such a narrow-minded fool. Elena shouted at him not to be mistaken because the first prince was much better than him. Kaizen was just furious and ordered her to say it again. Elena smiled and thought that he was probably thinking because she couldn't do it. That's why she said that she repeats. I repeat again, that His Highness Lloyd is much better than him, and if he asks in what place, she will answer immediately that, in everything, and character and talent and even appearance. The first prince came to them and said that the appointed time had passed, but she still had not arrived, so he thought that something had happened. He wondered what was going on here. She thought he was a sly fox. He chose the best time to show up. He was the perfect person to get under the skin of this crown prince. At this point, she had to endure it, but of course the problem was that the whole way home, she listened to dog crap and was beside herself with anger. Elena pressed herself against the first prince and noticed that the Kaizen was asking why she was dating him, and it was all because they loved each other. Elena was pleased to see the crown prince's face change, and he was again blown away by anger. Kaizen turned to Milady and did not understand how she dared to do this, considering that she had a fiancé. He says, whatever comes to mind. Elena said she thinks it's not for him to talk about it. After all, she remembers very well what she saw when she first came here. Kaizen started saying that men and women were different and didn't understand how she could look at them from the same angle. Irina asked how they were different. The head is one, the body is one. Each has 2 arms and legs. In addition, the structure of the internal organs is also the same. She did notice, however, that they were different in one way. It was the genitals. He had something she didn't. Kaizen asked her to stop because he was already feeling a bit embarrassed. He noticed that the first prince was laughing, so he said that this conversation was not for his ears, so he sent him away, but Lloyd refused. He told him not to touch his beloved whenever he wanted. Kaizen was simply horrified and asked what kind of beloved she was, and told him to get out of here and stop talking nonsense. Lloyd promised to show him who had to go. Then he hugged the lady. The lady didn't understand what he was doing, but he just went and kissed her on the forehead. He hoped that now it was clear who had to go. Kaizen was simply horrified. The crown prince turned around and said that they would see how long he could continue to do whatever he wanted. When he walked away, Lloyd asked Elena to take the trouble to explain what had happened here. During the realization, Elena could not believe what she had just done. She had dug her own grave. The next day, Elena's office. Her soul has entered this body. Regression cannot be activated. She ended up running away that day, leaving Lloyd demanding the truth. It would have been good if it had ended there, but because of what happened in the Imperial Palace, rumors spread so quickly that they even reached the ears of the parents. Mother said that she understood this. This was not something that could be avoided, so Elena had to fix everything as soon as possible. First of all, she decided to meet with Lloyd and explain the whole situation. Someone knocked, and she allowed them to come in. It was a maid who informed the militia that she had a guest. Elena told her that she was not yet ready to meet anyone, so she ordered the guest to be escorted to the right. Lena said in a trembling voice that the guest was someone important. Then Lloyd came in and asked if she wanted to escort him back. Elena was in complete shock. Princip noted that he really missed his beloved, possessing a fatal charm, so he could not wait and came in person. Elena, of course I wanted to meet and talk to him, but not right now. The maid immediately ran away and said that in your case, she wished them a good time. Elena suggested that he sit down first. After that, the principal asked if she was now ready to tell him everything and explain. Elena believed that there was no need for this. She did it out of necessity, and besides, it was written in their contractual clauses. Elena is not obliged to tell him all her plans, and he himself also acted without informing him, so he can consider that they are even. Okay, she was right, so he decided to skip it. So he suggested that they talk about the pressing matter. Since the plenary session, many aristocrats have contacted the Lloyd, and of course, there is a dud among them. But to give the appearance that the Lloyd has grown in power, this is quite good. After all, from now on, they will have to constantly oppose us to one prince. What is more surprising is that the emperor presented the servants to the first prince. The prince remarked that perhaps he was pleased with what had happened at the meeting. and so he suddenly presented him with an award. Elena asked if he thought these were excellent results. And by the way, the game that helped them in the voting was unfamiliar to her. Elena knows only the aristocrats' titles, but their faces are not. Therefore, the Crown Prince said that this is the same Rochelle Garden that he told about last time. A person is the embodiment of talent and ability that he himself has chosen. Elena noticed that he seemed to like this man, and that he also had extraordinary skills. Elena noticed that it was such a relief, and it seemed like he was done. Well, it wasn't, because the most important thing remained. The Emperor was interested in their relationship. As Elena thought she was finished with his character, he would never leave her alone because she was twisting his 2 sons around her neck. The prince said that she shouldn't frown like that. His reaction was not bad. The girl was surprised and asked again how it all went. Lloyd said it was a night of fighting for love. The Emperor remarked that he had heard that today was hectic. This is not something that father needs to worry about, the Crown Prince said. So, he glared at his brother and remarked that this was a common thing, so he would deal with it himself. The Emperor was surprised and asked what Lloyd thought about this. The boy asked his father if he could ask for something. He wanted him to break off his younger brother's engagement to Lady Rosaria. The father was horrified, and so was the Crown Prince. He noted that Lloyd was indeed acting beyond his expectations, and then he laughed. Asks to break off the engagement. Lloyd finally made up his mind. In addition, he called him younger brother. They are the Crown Prince. Thus he violated the succession structure. Then he too would kindle this flame. The Emperor said that unfortunately, he could not fulfill this request since everything related to marriage was regulated by state law. Kaizen was delighted and asked his brother with a smile if he had heard the answer. If he does not know, he should sit and keep quiet. The Emperor added that however it is impossible to foresee the future. Since ancient times, whoever could get a beautiful maiden was the best of the heroes, so they have to keep fighting each other just like they are now. And they must also climb to the top to take possession of everything. The Emperor said that it was late at night, so they could go on with it. Lloyd bowed to his master, but the Kaizen noted that he had something to say. The Emperor asked what he was talking about. The Crown Prince said that he wanted to hold a hunting festival. The hunting festival is an event that the imperial family holds once a year. Its purpose was to reduce the number of wild animals attacking private homes in winter and to ensure food supplies. However, since the focus is on strengthening the bond between aristocrats, rather than hunting, this will definitely be a good chance to strengthen your position. The Emperor noted that he was not behaving like a crown prince, but he allowed him. Despite the refusal to break off the engagement, the Emperor was not in a bad mood. It is also worth noting that a hunting festival is planned for the near future. Elena was shocked and asked again what this meant. The prince did not understand what was wrong with Elena, and she was simply horrified. The hunting festival is the one where Rosetta will appear for the first time. The crown prince will shoot a bow and accidentally hit a person. Then Kaizen will come closer and ask her if she is okay, because he mistook her for a mountain beast. She ran through the dense forest and quickly reached the place where she heard the screams. And the moment she saw the scene unfolding before her eyes, the Kaizen froze, forgot to even breathe. Why now? Rosetta is supposed to appear after the hunting festival that will take place in winter, and if she appears after this sudden celebration, everything will be bad. Elena didn't understand why it would be held now and not in winter. In the original novel, everything was different. This festival was in winter. It was held in winter. Then the main character appeared. Kaizen fell in love with her, and eventually she was removed. Elena still hasn't been able to break off the engagement, and now the main character is here. Lloyd came closer and said that it was necessary to be without bias, but Gazprom did not understand what he meant. It was easy for him to say that because it wasn't his life that was at stake. But the prince told her to think carefully. The main character appeared at a festival that was held in winter. The lady remembered that she met the crown prince at the winter hunting festival, which meant that unless this condition was met, she would not appear. Besides, even if the female lead shows up, the reason the crown prince has to kill her is because she bullied the female lead, and she won't act like that. Lloyd noted that in that case, his crown prince no longer had any reason to be hated and eliminated. Elena calmed down a little and noted that he was indeed right. If you think about it, the plot of the original novel is already changing. Besides, she's with Lloyd now. Even if things go wrong, her actions on the way to her goal won't change. The gentleman told her not to rush and not to worry. Besides, she had him as a partner. If something happened, they could discuss and think about it together. The most important thing now is to attract the attention of the Emperor. We need to better demonstrate their relationship to him. That's when she can start working on her #1 goal. Elena agreed, and I tried to point out that at first, it was enough for them to just show everyone that they were even closer than they were now.